is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 7 o'clock, the government says UK airlines are not suffering from a shortage of fuel after the EU warned of rising prices and cancellations due to the war in Iran. Finance expert Ben Kumars told LBC European airlines are starting to make changes.
Lufthansa, the German airline, announced, I think it's 20,000 flights cancelled. You'd probably argue it's some of their more niche destinations. But what they're doing is funneling the fuel they have into the routes that will be most profitable and fly the most passengers.
Airlines are reportedly lobbying the UK government to relax environmental and noise rules and cut taxes on flying. Iran says it hasn't decided yet if it'll take part in fresh peace talks with the US. Separately, Donald Trump's thanked Iran for calling off the execution tonight of 8 women protesters, but authorities there say their lives had not been at risk. A proposal to ban under-16s from using social media has been rejected by MPs for a third time. Ministers have been urging them to wait till a consultation on the issue closes at the end of May. Tory MP Damien Hines says Labour's putting up a poor argument against implementing a ban now.
And that is, well, we can't do this one thing because there are some other things we could do as well. That just doesn't hold water. All those other things around gaming, chatbots, around addictive features and so on, those could all be additive to having a ban.
A man's been found not guilty of the manslaughter of his wife, who killed herself in 2017. Christopher Trebus was also cleared of raping Taryn Baird and coercive behaviour. The 44-year-old from Swindon said he wasn't in the country on several days of the allegations. He spoke outside Winchester Crown Court.
This has had a profound impact on my life. It's been an incredibly difficult experience. I'd also like to acknowledge that domestic abuse is a very real and serious issue, and victims must always be supported.
The Prime Minister's former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, will be questioned by MPs next week. He's been summoned by the Foreign Affairs Committee to explain the process surrounding Lord Mandlesson's appointment as ambassador to Washington. Former Labour Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell told Andrew Marr Sir Keir Starmer is beholden to a small clique in the party that got him elected. And that includes Peter Mandlesson and Morgan McSweeney, who got jobs as rewards.
When Peter Mandelson's name was first bandied about, I said to Keir, and I said it publicly, I put it out in a statement, people will think you've lost all sense of judgment on this, but he still went ahead. Why? Because he was dependent on that one faction.
Labour MP for Kensington and Bayswater, Joe Powell, told LBC a Labour leadership contest wouldn't make sense right now.
I think people want us to focus on the things that really matter to them. Obviously, we've got a war in the Middle East, we've got the risks of energy prices and all the rest of it. I'd like us to get back to that as soon as we can.
Football, Chelsea say they'll undertake a process of self-reflection after sacking their head coach, Liam Rosenior. He'd been in charge for 15 weeks. Stargazers could get a chance to see as many as 100 shooting stars an hour tonight. The annual Lirid meteor shower will peak late tonight and will be most visible in northern parts. Dara Patel is from the National Space Centre.
The particular bits of dust we're seeing tonight will be that from Comet Thatcher. So it's not anywhere near us right now, but we're travelling through the debris that it left on its last pass.
And the stars of the Devil Wears Prada sequel have been here in Leicester Square for the film's European premiere. Meryl Streep returns alongside her co-stars Anne Hathaway and Emily Blunt. Anne says she felt she needed to be part of the second one 20 years after the first.
I had some pretty big dreams for this one. I thought that the original script had an almost magnetic quality to it, and it had so much energy, and I just remember thinking, what is this? I have to be a part of it.
In the city, the FTSE 100 closed down 17 points at 10,480. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather, dry with clear spells tonight, breezy in the West Country, lows of -1 to 7 Celsius. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 5 minutes past 7 on LBC. We have, for the next 55 minutes with us, Sir James Cleverly. I still can't get used to the Sir bit, but I don't know. Can you get used to it?
It's.
Do you expect it? Do you like it?
No. Small confession. When people say Mr. Cleverly, a little bit in my head says, inside my head said, it's Sir James actually. I'm never going to let those words leave my lips because that does put you in a category which I do not want to be in.
Anyway, as you know, hopefully. He's former Foreign Secretary, former Home Secretary. He's now Shadow Housing and Local Government Secretary. Came back into Kemi Badenoch's shadow cabinet after a little bit of a break. What prompted you to do that?
To be honest with you, I was watching how hard a lot of my other parliamentary candidates, my parliamentary colleagues, were working. And it is a byproduct of numbers. You forget that whether you are one short of a majority or whether you are well short of a majority, there's a certain amount of work that you have to do as the official opposition that the minor parties don't have to do. Whether those Lib Dems, Greens, I was about to say UKIP, Reform, they don't have to do them. The official opposition, there's a lot of work to do. And I thought, I've got to play my part. So I came back in, and actually, I also realised I miss it. You're addicted to these kind of things.
I was slightly surprised when you took that job, but then I thought, no, I know James. He quite fancies going up against Angela Rayner, but that didn't last long, did it?
I was genuinely, I like Angela Rayner. I respect her a lot. I think a lot of people really underestimate her, including people in the Labour movement. I thought that would be a really, really good and challenging brief. And then, she got caught with her dodgy tax affairs, and I never sparred with her across the dispatch box, which is, I don't have many regrets in my life. Maybe that's a mini regret.
Well, maybe you'll have an opportunity soon. Who knows? Right. The point of this hour is for you to ask James questions rather than me. 0345 6060 973. If you can't phone, you can WhatsApp your question on that number, or you can text 84850. And of course, as usual, you can watch the whole 3-hour programme on Global Player, the LBC app, and the LBC YouTube channel. Let's go to Matt in Birmingham first up. Hello, Matt.
Evening, James.
Good evening, Matt.
Yes, my question to you, so Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour Party keep banging on about this 5p, they're freezing the 5p hike. That's all right for now, but the fuel crisis is here and it's hurting a lot of people. What would you do as a party to actually tackle the actual problem, of the amount of tax that is charged to the general public?
You make a really good point. There are things that the government could do right now with regard to the cost of fuel, because people are feeling it right now. And the biggest lever at their disposal is the tax that they apply to fuel, whether it's domestic fuel, industrial fuel, petrol pump prices. They can do something about that right now, and they're choosing not to. Yeah. So Claire Coutinho, who is our Shadow Energy Minister, has set out a detailed plan, and it is available. You can look at it online, and it includes short-term, medium-term and long-term things. So the short-term stuff is about reducing the tax. The government could do that straight away.
By how much?
Well, I'm a Conservative. My instinct is the more the better. But
because 55% of every litre of fuel that we buy, the price of that, 55% is tax.
Yeah. The majority of the spend is tax, as you say. And that is purely in the gift of the government. So they could reduce the tax straight away.
Yeah, but you could reduce it by 10 pence, or you could reduce it by 50 pence. I mean, the 50 pence obviously would make a huge difference to people. Is she suggesting that level of subsidy?
Look, to be honest with you, and I'd need to double check it's not a subsidy.
Well, okay. As soon as I said the word, I thought wrong word, but you know what I mean.
I do know what you mean. But the point is, this is about choices. The government is choosing to spend more money on unproductive things like the welfare bill. They've decided to scrap the 2-child benefits cap, which will cost billions of pounds. So they're choosing to spend more money in things like that, and they're choosing not to reduce the taxes on people who have to drive to get to work. And of course, most people in the country use private cars to get to work rather than public transport. So they could and should do that. But also, what we have set out is that we should be opening those oil and gas fields in the North Sea. Norway, our friend and neighbour, are doing exactly that and selling those that's being sold. It's sold on the open market, but the tax revenue.
But that's not a short-term thing.
No, that's a longer-term thing.
But one short-term thing you could do, and Kemi, when she was here a couple of weeks ago doing a phone-in, she denied that the petrol forecourts were profiteering. And yet, in my local petrol station, the price of diesel has been $1.90 a litre for the last 3 weeks. The price of oil has gone down from $110 a barrel to somewhere between 85 and 95, and yet the price hasn't changed.
And Ian, I am definitely not going to defend the petrol retailers, but the uncertainty that the government introduces. So uncertainty and risk have to be priced in, and a lot of businesses are unwilling to pass on savings because they know that they get whacked with taxes. So when things go well, they get whacked with taxes. When things go less well, they've got to absorb the pain. Now it's for them to balance their books, but the bottom line is that a bit more certainty enables businesses of all types to pass on savings when they come. But as I say, we set out a plan which involves tax cuts in the short term, in opening up our oil and gas fields in the medium term, and a proper commitment to things like small modular nuclear reactors in the medium to long term. And the accumulation of those things gives us a much, much cheaper energy mix, which is good for you, good for business, good for the country.
Matt, do you want to come back?
Yeah, I want to come back with one thing, actually. It's about, you just mentioned about the taxes that the companies incur. Different areas incur different taxes. But there's a few fuel stations around by my area. The one I've been getting from is at $1.49 at the moment for petrol, which is pretty cheap. It's really cheap. And then you go 2 miles down the road and they're at $1.59. 160, give or take. So how can you say that they're trying to protect themselves in regards to the cost of taxes on themselves? They're all paying the same, and it all comes out the same. I work down by Hams Hall, I do, near Cozhill, and it all gets pumped out of there from the refinery. It comes from the same spot, it does. There's no difference. When they say it's all filtered differently, it's not filtered differently. Okay. It all comes in the same trucks.
So this, funnily enough, Matt, this is an example of where the government wastes public money. So they were spending money to create an app to let drivers like you know where they can get the cheapest petrol. Cracking idea, brilliant idea, which is why a number of commercial app developers have already done that, and you can download their apps completely for free and find the cheapest petrol and diesel in your local area. Yet the government decided to spend public money creating an app that already exists. And that's why we're all paying too much tax, because you've got that kind of incompetence in government.
The aviation sector are now demanding subsidies from the government, and the hospitality industry is too, because they've been hit by this in an obvious way. Do you think airlines deserve support?
Well, I don't like, as a point of principle, this tax and subsidise, and it happens far too much. The better thing to do is to reduce the taxes in the first place, rather than maximising taxes, which is fine perhaps in a good year, but when you have something like the situation in the Gulf or the conflict in Ukraine or something else, when you have one of those kind of what people like to call external shocks, then the businesses genuinely are struggling financially, and they turn to the government and they say, well, look, you've made our business environment almost impossible to make any kind of profit in, so now you need to bail us out. I would much, much prefer we had a lower tax regime in the first place.
But we are where we are.
We are where we are.
And some of these companies are saying, well, they might even go out of business if they don't get some sort of support. I mean, you remember the cabinet when Liz Truss had that energy support when Russia invaded Ukraine, £40 billion worth of subsidies to consumers. You didn't have a problem with those kind of subsidies at that point.
Well, and look what happened. We got punished by the markets. We got punished by the electorate. So well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Look, there was a very good reason why Liz put those subsidies in place. I think the big error that she made at the same time was not making it clear to the market she had a plan to pay for those subsidies. and the markets punished the government, and then the voters punished us. So let's not do that again. Let's create a situation where well-run businesses are able to make a sensible profit and basically self-insure against difficult situations.
So the message is no bailouts to the airlines, no bailouts to any sector, because we did that last time and we got it wrong.
So the point is, the problem that is created is in significant part created by this government. They've been ramping up business taxes. They're making it harder to do business.
Well, to be fair, it's the war in Iran as well.
Yeah, but the point is, stuff always happens. Stuff always happens. The idea that there's never going to be something like the war in Iran or the war in Ukraine or a natural catastrophe somewhere in the world is nonsense. You have to put plans in place for the eventuality that something difficult happens.
Yeah, but we live in an environment now where individuals and companies, at the first sign of anything going wrong, the government must help.
And we have got to move away from that because it's unsustainable. It is unsustainable. And this is why Kemi, I think, is absolutely right. We've got to be honest with people to say it is not the job of the government to make all the difficult things go away. It's the job of the government to create environments where people can have stability and they can have a decent enough income, and ditto with businesses, so we can be more self-reliant.
Right, we're coming to more of your questions to James Cleverly in just a few moments' time. It's 17 minutes past 7 here on LBC.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
Why don't you get the Prime Minister on the phone and say, come on, Sir Keir, we've actually got to show some action here.
Straight to the point.
You're going backwards.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
This is not a one-off incident.
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
At Lidl, we're giving you 50% off a fruit or veg item on your next shop. Just scan the Lidl Plus app at checkout, and when you scan, you'll be in with a chance to win your whole shop back. Open Lidl Plus and start saving today. Lidl, more to value. 18 plus GB residents. Various prices available, subject to availability. Ends 30th of 5th, 26. Full T's and C's apply. See lidl.co.uk/LP-terms.
If you were missold a home on a holiday park, holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive compensation. Text ADVICE to 78900.
Nothing beats that just booked feeling. Because when you book a Jet2 holiday, you start dreaming of pool days and seeing the sights. Get ahead for summer. Book now with just a £60 deposit per person. Choose from our best rooms and hotels and save £200 per couple. Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. Package holidays you can trust. APTRA Natural Protected. Subject to availability and conditions.
People ask me, what's my good place? Checking out the food trucks on the weekend with my partner. And knowing that Pension B helped me combine my pensions into one easy-to-manage plan.
Tacos?
Tacos.
At Pension B, we believe that when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. Download the app or go to pensionbee.com and be pension confident. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
So James Cleverly is with us for this hour, Conservative Shadow Housing Communities and Local Government Secretary and MP for Braintree. Right, let's go to Matthew in Burnley. Hello, Matthew.
Hi, how are you? Nice to speak to you.
Good, thank you. What would you like to ask?
I'd like to ask Sir James if he agrees with me that military spending needs to increase immediately, and if so, where he'd find the budget to do so.
I absolutely agree with you that military spending needs to increase and increase immediately. This whole kind of on the never, never, you've got Keir Starmer saying it needs to go up and we'll do that at some point in the future. That's no good for the military leadership in terms of recruitment, in terms of equipment purchasing, in terms of repairing the accommodation estate across the armed forces. And it's no good because the threat is in the here and now. So I totally agree we need to do it, and we need to do it now. And in terms of where the money would come from, again, we've been very, very clear, and we said this at party conference, that we're only going to spend money where we can identify savings, going back to the point we were saying, you've got to balance the books. And the £3 billion, estimated £3 billion or so increase in the welfare budget is the first place we would go to. So just at the same
reverse the two-child benefit cap.
Reverse the two-child benefit cap. And this is why it is so disingenuous for the Prime Minister to say, oh, money's tight, whilst basically writing a multi-billion pound bribe to his own backbenchers, because that's what it is. That's what it is. It's to save his skin, and that money should be going into defence. That's where the first port of call.
But that's the drop in the ocean compared to what is needed, isn't it? I mean, you're a former military man yourself. I mean, you must see the threat from not just from Russia, but from other threats too, and think, well, it's not just conventional armaments that we need to spend money on. It's drones, it's cyber warfare, it's cyber security. And that is going to cost tens of billions of pounds, isn't it? So £3 billion is a drop in the ocean.
But it's an important down payment, and it can be done quickly. That's money that can be deployed pretty quickly. And Ian, you're absolutely right. The conflict in Ukraine has been a wake-up call, or should be a wake-up call for all of us. Periodically, the nature of conflict changes dramatically, and I think we're at one of those periods.
But you were Foreign Secretary in a government for 2 years after the invasion of Ukraine. I don't remember any big commitments being made on massively increasing defence spending in that time, because I mean, you're right, the warnings have been there for some time.
I think we could and should have gone further and faster with regard to our spending domestically. I think we made a lot of really, really good decisions. We denuded our own military capability in the short term to give the Ukrainian armed forces the stuff that they needed, whether it was from those NLAW missiles, artillery systems, weapons. So we stripped the cupboard bare because they needed it in the here and now. I felt at the time, and I feel still, that we should have been much, much more energetic at replenishing our own stocks and giving a very unambiguous signal to the defence industry that we wanted them to really, really get working on replacing our equipment, our ammunition, as well as building the next generation of military capabilities. So, yeah, we could and perhaps should have done more. The point of being in opposition is it forces you to do an audit of what you did in government and what you would do differently in the future. And James Cartledge, Kemi have absolutely set out where we will make savings and where we will spend the money.
I mentioned the Liz Truss government earlier. You, of course, were Foreign Secretary in that government too. Now, yesterday she was in the LBC studio speaking to my colleague Tom Swarbrick and said this.
Do you think Trump's been a good president?
I do. I think he's been a very good president. Iran? I think he's been a very good president, and I think if we'd had Kamala Harris, we would be the West would be facing a very, very serious crisis.
Do you think the war in Iran is justified?
I do. I believe that the nuclear weapons that the Iranians were developing are a threat not just to the Middle East but to global stability. And I watched. I was Foreign Secretary and Prime Minister when Biden was in, and I just watched the can being kicked down the road again and again, and the Iranians playing the system, and Trump has called them out.
And so Keir Starmer has knocked back an ally on what you say is a justified war.
Correct.
Do you agree with your former boss?
I agree with parts of what she was saying. So I do think that we could and should, and I called for this at the time, and I'm sure it's minuted in meetings that I attended. I think the international community should have been much, much, much more firm and dynamic and robust with Iran to deter them from their nuclear ambitions. I think if we had done that, then this conflict might not have happened at all. She is right in that the idea of a nuclear-armed Iran is completely unacceptable. And I don't completely agree with her on President Trump's effectiveness. Look, there have been certain things that he has done that have been very effective, and there have been certain things that he has done that have been deeply counterproductive. So, giving him an across-the-board set of straight A's, as I think Liz has done, I don't agree with that.
Would you have relished being Foreign Secretary dealing with the Trump administration, or are you rather glad you're not? Do you feel sorry for Yvette Cooper?
People in diplomacy love predictability. That's the thing you crave the most. You rarely get it, but you crave it the most. This is a very unpredictable White House. And it makes being a friend and ally hard.
Well, let's put it bluntly. Are they still a reliable ally in your view?
Look, the relationship with the United States of America is one of the most important international relationships we have. Whoever is in the White House is the choice of the American people, and we have a duty both to the world as a whole, but to the British people in particular, to make that relationship.
But come on, they're not being reliable, are they? I mean, with the comments that Trump has made about our country, about our Prime Minister, about the Mayor of London, the fact that he's now effectively a non-voting member of NATO because he just doesn't think it's a... I mean, they're unreliable. Why can't you just say that?
Well, you've got to deal with what you've got. And they are unpredictable. It's a very unpredictable
we know that,
White House.
but why can't you just say they're unreliable? Because they clearly are.
Because I'm using my own word, Ian. You can use your word, I can use my word. The great thing about diplomacy is I get to choose my language, you get to choose yours.
That is very true. Christina is in Beckenham. Hello, Christina.
Hello. Nice to speak to you both.
Hi.
Hi. My question is really for you, James. I mean, I know that you're a Lewisham boy. I spoke with James earlier in the week, reflecting on what Kenny Badenoch mentioned regarding the attack on North London. What I wanted to ask simply was this. The position she has taken, that it was similar, or if it had been a black church, is the example she used, that the country or the government would be up in arms. I just would like to know from yourself really, do you agree with the words that she used, with the comparison that she drew, and with her bringing into the mix a black church?
So did you hear what she said?
I don't think I heard the particular
I think Corey's just said he can play it to us.
Okay,
so let's just hear it quickly.
What I would say to all of your listeners, but especially the Jewish listeners, is that as a black woman in this country, I have never seen the level of racism, discrimination, intimidation and attacks that have been directed at the Jewish community. And I think that if people were firebombing black churches, we'd be calling the way that synagogues have been attacked, people killed, being firebombed, the ambulance services being firebombed, I think there'd be a national emergency. I think we're getting to that stage. We have now reached a point where people shrug their shoulders at what is happening to Jews. This is not right.
I've got a lot of sympathy with what she's saying on that. I had conversations when I was Home Secretary with senior police officers when I was saying that their response to some of the anti-Semitic comments that we were seeing on the pro-Palestinian marches was unacceptable. And some were saying, well, it's distasteful, but it's not illegal. And the point I made was, had those banners had racist slogans directed at Britain's black communities as they had racist slogans directed at British Jewish communities, I believe that the police would have been much, much, much more energetic in their arrests.
So
I made that point. I made that point.
But that effectively says there is a hierarchy of racism in this country.
Well, our position, Kemi's position, is there absolutely should not be a hierarchy. I think that there has been an unwillingness amongst some agencies of the state to be as energetic in guarding against anti-Jewish racism as they guard against other forms of racism. And I think that is something as a society that we should be very, very
But then again, you look at Nick Timothy's remarks about that Muslim prayer session in Trafalgar Square, and people say, well, that he's singling out one particular religious, cultural group there, and that it could be seen as divisive in the same way that people are now accusing Kemi Badenoch of being divisive by effectively drawing... comparing two different forms of racism.
Well, I said at the time, I don't completely agree with Nick, but he was, I think he was making, he was making an important point about the nature of, faith in the public sphere and the role of women, particularly in the public sphere. I think that is a fundamentally different, an important but fundamentally different point. I think one of the things that we are looking to do, and Kemi is very, very, very strong on this and very focused on this, it's about the universal and consistent application of the rules and norms and laws in the UK. And the fact is, we've seen too many examples of where people have been deterred from doing the right thing because they are so scared of accusations of racism, and that is completely counterproductive. So look, I want to make sure that everyone feels safe in the country. I want to make sure that everybody knows that the state will treat them equally, fairly, and evenly. And at the moment, I've had too many people tell me that is not how they feel.
Christina, what's your reaction to what James has said?
I think the last sentence you made is what I'd like to pick up on, which is equal treatment, meaning being treated fairly regardless of your particular box you may check. I mentioned earlier in the week, my sister's children are Jewish from their father's side, they're Caribbean from their mother's side. Now, the position that I sit in when I look at things like Kemi Badenoch's comments are, in the UK, you cannot compare pain. You can't compare one group's hurt with another. And that is where I feel that the error was made. Feel free to disagree or to say a different point, but that is fundamentally, she used herself as speaking as a black woman. Now, I just think that she's kind of gaslit a large community of women, of black people, and men, of course, men and women, but I just think it was an error. And I don't have any bad feelings towards Kemi. I think she's done a beautiful job as Conservative leader. I think that the steps, and I used to be Labour, but they have stung me with the VAT rise on my son's school fees. So I am looking around at the parties and I'm questioning things. But this, I don't think, was a good call on her part.
Look, I understand the point you make. I'm not sure. I am sure. I don't completely agree with you. But you do raise a. She raised a fair point. You raise a fair point. But I think Kemi's raising an important point as well, which is, and as I say, I've used examples where I would say the same set of actions in a slightly different context would trigger a different response. And that shouldn't be how it is.
I thought the interesting thing about that was that she said speaking as a black woman, because I don't think I've ever heard her say that before. It's a bit like, you never heard Margaret Thatcher say, well, speaking as a woman. And I mean, Kemi hasn't used her own racial background in the past to the extent that she might have done, actually.
So it's not completely unheard, but she doesn't push that to the forefront. And that's one of the things one of the reasons I am so proud of this country is that the Conservative Party, the arguably most traditionally British party in the British political spectrum, is led by a black woman, and mainly no one gives a monkey. No one cares. And we had an Indian heritage prime minister. No one really cared. We had a mixed race English African foreign secretary. No, the list goes on and on and on. So both as a country and as a party, I love the fact that for the majority of the time, we discuss ideas and policy and philosophy rather than skin colour and religion and heritage. And I think that's massively, massively to our credit.
Right, more calls. Christina, thank you for yours. More calls in just a few moments' time. It's 7:34. News headlines on LBC with Matt Hewitt.
We're hearing the government is being urged to help airlines with rising jet fuel costs because of the Iran war. Lufthansa is dropping thousands of short-haul flights this summer. Donald Trump claims 8 female protesters who are due to be executed in Iran will be spared the death penalty and will soon be released. He'd previously asked for the women to be spared as a start to peace negotiations. And a court ruled a 44-year-old man didn't commit manslaughter when his wife died in 2017. Christopher Trebus was also cleared of raping Taryn Baird, who took her own life. LBC weather. Dry with clear spells tonight, cloudy in the north and east, breezy in the West Country, and lows of -1 to 7 Celsius.
LBC
Your time is valuable. Your perspective should be too. The Economist cuts through the noise with the stories that truly shape your world.
How can you believe that a new regime won't crush you just like the previous one?
Online scams are stranger than they've ever been.
When the world's turned upside down, know which way is up. Read, watch, or listen to The Economist.
This year at Amazon, we're increasing the electric vehicles used for deliveries across Europe to over 10,000. It's a difference you'll notice on your doorstep, where babies are made a fuss of, where we deliver footballs for kids' kickabouts, and where they deliver the football straight into next door's garden. Can they have their ball back, please? We're delivering change where it matters, on your doorstep. Based on projected delivery service partner vehicles across the UK and EU by end of 2026.
Our Pets in a Pickle. We're here when it matters most. For fuss-free pet insurance policies as unique as they are. Visit petsinnapickle.co.uk.
Nothing beats that just booked feeling. Because when you book a Jet2 holiday, you start dreaming of pool days and seeing the sights. Get ahead for summer. Book now with just a £60 deposit per person. Choose from our best rooms and hotels and save £200 per couple. Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. Package holidays you can trust. APTRA Natural Protected. Subject to availability and conditions.
This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
7:37 on LBC. Lorna says, another right-wing guest I see. Did you say that when we had a Davy on last week for an hour-long phone-in, Lorna? I don't think you did, or if I must have missed that. We have got a government minister coming on for an hour-long phone-in from Labour next week as well. So in an election period, we actually do have to be balanced. You might not think so sometimes, but I can assure you we take those responsibilities very seriously. James Cleverley is here answering your questions. George in Walthamstow has got one. Hi, George.
Hi, Ian. Hi, James.
Hi, George.
A question onto your brief now, James, on housing. As a young person who's trying to move up onto the housing ladder eventually, amidst the Conservatives talking about things like cuts, financial responsibility, etc., how will you ensure young people like me will have affordable, cheaper, but quality housing in areas like London, and we won't be forced to move out miles away from London?
How old are you, James?
George.
George,
18. Sorry, I'm 18.
Well, I bought my first flat in Walthamstow in 1988, and I was 26, and it cost me £58,000. I looked on Zoopla the other day, and a similar flat in the same road was going for £380,000. Yeah. I mean, that's a challenge. That's a challenge, James, isn't it?
It is, George. Look, you are asking all the right questions. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. At the moment, I can't give you all the answers because we're still working on policy, but I can give you some indicators of where my head is at on this. So firstly, a couple of things really, really important. We've got to get stuff built. We've got to get more houses built. And in your question, you said, you implied, getting them good quality and in the right place. Yeah. And one of the points that I'm making is when Conservatives like me say we shouldn't be building all over the green belt, to be credible, we also have to identify where we are going to build. So it's not enough for Conservatives to go, we're not going to build over there. We have to be willing to say, but we will build over here. And brownfield, previously used land is where it's at. And there is lots of that. All these people say, oh, there's not much brownfield. Nonsense. There is plenty. But we need to significantly reduce the cost of building on brownfield sites. At the moment, it's much, much cheaper building in open fields than it is, say, on former industrial land or that kind of stuff. We need to rebalance that. We do need to give people like you the genuine belief that they will have a chance to get on the property ladder and that they can do so in the places where they want to live. There's no point in having people who work in London but can only afford to have something like 2 hours commute away. That's no good at all. One of the things that we're looking to do is get more liquidity in the housing market, get more stuff actually being bought and sold. And part of it is encouraging people to downsize when they're in homes bigger than they need, which is one of the reasons why we're going to scrap stamp duty on people's primary residences, because there are lots of people who feel trapped financially in houses. And I've had conversations where they'd be quite happy to downsize, get a bit of cash in their pocket, free up a family size house. And when someone moves out of a big house, you might think to yourself as a young person, well, look, I'm not in the market to buy that kind of house, which is true, but somebody is, and they will be moving up. And there's a ripple effect which frees up entry-level homes that you might be in a position to afford.
But the problem for George is that, at 18, I guess you're probably not looking to buy something immediately, George, but
No.
The mortgage costs are likely to rise over the next couple of years because of what's happening in the Middle East. Interest rates are likely to go up. You can't mitigate that, can you, really, unless you try and buck the market, and that's not something Conservatives generally are keen on doing.
Well, it's not just whether you're keen or unkeen on doing it. It's like trying to defy gravity. It doesn't work. So certain things we've got to do. We've got to up the rate of house building. The Labour government talk about building 1.5 million houses. Nobody that I speak to in the sector believe that is going to happen, and they never did. But they're not doing any of the things to make it happen. In fact, house building is in decline. And you mentioned London. In London, the latest figures we have is that only 5,500 new homes were built in London in a year. That is nowhere near.
But is that because the building sector just won't invest in building new houses? They've got the land to do it, but they're not building. Or is it the planning system? Is it politicians are not or are trying to the actions that politicians are taking, whether it's in local or national government, are effectively stultifying the market?
It's a number of things. There are enough planning consents across the UK to meet our short to medium term housing needs if they all got built out. So planning is part of the issue, but in the short term, that's not the real pinch point, because there are loads and loads of planning consents across the country, including in London. Money is an issue. It's the conversations I've had. A lot of building firms said, actually, it is now so hard to make money that they actually get better return on capital, pretty much, by sticking it in a bank rather than building houses. So that's disincentivizing them doing the business. Okay. Cost of employing builders has gone through the roof. Cost of materials has gone through the roof because of the decisions that the government has made.
Right. We're going to go. Thank you very much indeed for your question,
Cheers,
George. Good luck on the housing market at some point, hopefully in your 20s. Now, Doug in Rickmansworth is on the line and wants to have a word. Hello, Doug.
Hello there. Hello, Sir James. I have a quick question. We're coming up to 10 years since the Brexit vote, and you were obviously an ardent supporter of leaving the EU. Could you tell me, without mentioning COVID, Ukraine, or the great trade deals that we sort of have with countries but can't really rely on them, and I'm not sure whether they're actually all that great, like Australia and the US, can you tell me whether you think the country is now in a better place than it was 10 years ago?
So, short answer is yes, but the longer answer is why do you say without mentioning three very, very obvious advantages? It's a bit kind of putting your thumb on the scales.
But they're not advantages. The US trade deal is completely unreliable.
Yeah, but the US trade deal was not the only trade deal that we signed.
Australia laughed at us.
Well, look, I'm just going to put this out there. I'm unconvinced you're really in the mood to be persuaded by my answer, but nevertheless, I will
give him the benefit of the doubt, James.
I will plough on.
Live in Europe.
You can still live in Europe.
My children could go and study in Europe.
They can still study in Europe.
Well, they can if they pay third country fees. That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Well, hey, look. So, as I say, I'm not convinced you're going to be convinced. But the simple fact of the matter,
because you created an environment where, frankly, fairly odious individuals, even worse than Farage, are now mainstream.
Well,
that's the environment that was created because your party decided to try and stop itself self-destructing. And
I am very comfortable that a huge issue, our relationship with Europe, which was something which had an effect on so many areas of our lives, hadn't been tested against the views of the British people for
many of whom now
decades.
dead, and
we can.
That's where we are.
Look, as I say, you can ask and answer your own questions, but the point is that we had not tested our relationship with the European Union against the views of the British people for decades. It is completely legitimate to do so. The British people came up with an answer, clearly one that you don't like. I get it. There are always advantages and disadvantages to being or not being a member state of the EU. You talk about your children having the opportunity to live and work in Europe. They can still do that. Your children could live and work in the US. They can live and work in Africa. They can live and work in the Middle East. The point is that the British people had a chance to speak. They spoke. It's incumbent on the British government to deliver on the explicit mandate of the British people in that referendum. And, we're always very comfortable with what we know. And moving to something new can sometimes, I think in your case is probably the case, it can be disconcerting, discomforting, maybe even something you don't like. But the bottom line is that a lot of the criticisms that we saw of the Brexit vote, when people say, we've taken this huge economic collapse, this is just not borne out by the figures. And so I absolutely stand by putting the questions to the British people, and I absolutely stand by my campaigning to leave the European Union. I absolutely stand by the fact that we obeyed the instructions of the voters.
Doug, thank you very much indeed. More calls in just a second. It's 7:47.
This is LBC.
Tony, what do you want to tell me? Good morning.
Scott has called from Glasgow. Hi, Scott.
Jane's in Camden first. Hi, Jane.
I should not have appointed Peter Mandlesson, and I apologise again to the victims of the paedophile Jeffrey Epstein, who were clearly failed by my decision.
Hear every side of the story.
Keir Starmer is completely devoid of curiosity. He never asks questions. He had no interest in inquiring about anything.
It shouldn't be on the Prime Minister to then doubt and second-guess every single official.
I'm paying a third more in fuel costs to fill my vehicle.
It just feels like far too much of a luxury now to keep your health.
I had to increase the rents quite considerably. And it's a choice between, do I eat tonight or don't I eat tonight?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. LBC, leading Britain's conversation.
At Lidl, we're giving you 50% off a fruit or veg item on your next shop. Just scan the Lidl Plus app at checkout, and when you scan, you'll be in with a chance to win your whole shop back. Open Lidl Plus and start saving today. Lidl, more to value. 18 plus GB residents, various prices available, subject to availability. Ends 30th of 5th, 26. Full T's and C's apply. See lidl.co.uk/LP-terms.
The following is from TfL.
My name was Luna, like the moon. I was 2 days short of my 17th birthday when I was killed. My killer wasn't a bad man. He had a rescue dog called Frank and rang his mum every Sunday. He wasn't a speed freak. He just thought it was okay to go a few miles an hour over the limit. But that was enough to knock me off my bike and kill me.
Speeding injures or kills over 1,000 people in London every year. Slow down. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Amazon offers term time working to their employees, like Anton, who's home to look after his daughters during their holidays.
Hello?
To him, this is the best sound in the world. Actually, maybe that's the best sound of all. Now that's term time working, offered at Amazon. 10 weeks off guaranteed per year. Mix of paid holiday and unpaid time off. Conditions apply.
Calling all young creatives. Kickstart your career in media. Apply now and join us in years 10 or 12 at Global Academy. globalacademy.com.
OK, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life?
We're doing Pretty Muddy.
It's an obstacle course.
There's one for kids.
Runners.
Walkers.
Book clubbers.
Nick clubbers.
10-pin bowlers.
Choir singers.
Lake swimmers.
Gardeners.
Whether you climb it,
slide it,
or crawl it.
Go all in against cancer.
All in to help fund life-saving research.
Sign up now
to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
Iain Dale on LBC.
10 to 8 on LBC. Sir James Cleverly is with us, Conservative Shadow Housing, Communities and Local Government Secretary and MP for Braintree. Before we come to another listener question, I'm going to use my presenter's privilege. And I want a newsline out of you, James.
Go on, do you?
Are you going to run for Mayor of London?
You would love me to give you a scoop.
I would, yeah,
today,
genuinely.
Look, I'm going to... Ian, I love you.
You showed a bit of ankle on it, haven't you?
I love you. You're a fantastic professional. You're a brilliant.
But I can hear the word "but" coming.
But I am not going to say to you anything that I've not said before or recently, which is, look, it's an incredibly important job. A number of people have asked me to think about it, both in London and elsewhere. I love being the MP for Braintree, and I've always said it would be a very, 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 very high bar for me to want to step away from that. But it's an incredibly important job, and as someone who works in London, is from London, and whose constituency is affected by London, Sadiq Khan being asleep at the wheel for the last 4 or 5 years is painful to watch, and I think the city suffered accordingly, as have the people in my constituency who are affected by London's success or otherwise.
Do you think you'd be good at it?
Of course, I think I'd be good at it. I think I'd be good at everything. I'm a politician, and we've got that little streak of arrogance that.
Because you did think about it before, didn't you? In 2016.
I did. Yeah, I gave it some. No, not 2016. But when I was on the London Assembly, I did give it some serious thought. But look, in hindsight, I had nowhere near the experience. It's actually a very important job, a very technical job.
Well, last time they were so desperate, they even asked me to consider running, and I said I'd rather stick needles in my eyes. But I'm taking that as a sort of tentative yes.
So sticking needles in the eyes, is that you showing a bit of ankle now?
No, it really isn't.
Yeah, well, that's what you would say.
No. I will say definitively no, and you haven't said that, have you?
Well,
just saying.
Lots of candidates have previously said definitive no's and then gone on to run. So
that is true. Spencer is in Crawley. Hello, Spencer.
Evening.
Hi.
James, following your loss to Kemi as leader of the Conservative Party...
Thanks for bringing that up, thank you.
How much different would your leadership have been from what Kemi has achieved?
Oh, cheers, thank you. That's a lovely question. Look, so funnily enough, we're not meant to discuss off-air conversations, but...
Oh God! What did I say?
we were talking about Kemi's leadership, and I said at the time. So I don't think I'm giving away too much or courting accusations of disloyalty. So my sales pitch when I was running for leadership is I was the most experienced candidate on the ticket, and that if elected leader of the Conservative Party, I could hit the ground running and get us off to a flying start. And my observation was that none of the other candidates had that level of experience. And I stand by that. It was a statement of fact. I think Kemi got off to a slower start than I would have because I had more experience. I'd done more media, etc., etc. The point I was making to Iain, and I look at myself on this, her acceleration has been phenomenal, and she has developed a style at the dispatch box which has completely wrong-footed Keir Starmer. He was very condescending towards her at the start. He gets bested by her every single Wednesday without fail. That's now just priced in.
That's not true.
It is true. True.
I mean,
pretty much true.
Okay, but there have been occasions when he has beaten her in the last 6 months, but I accept that she's so much better.
She's been much tighter in terms of the issues that she campaigns on, because it's very, very tempting to try and cover all your bases. And she's been very, very, very clear. Our duty is to protect the country, is to grow the economy, is to make sure the books balance. She's become very, very disciplined very, very quickly on that. And also she has got to know the mechanism of running a party in opposition very, very quickly. So look, what would have been different? I think I would have got off to a faster start, perhaps. But genuinely, and I would say this, wouldn't I? She's my boss. I think she has learnt her job very, very quickly and demonstrably improved very, very quickly, and is now, without doubt, the most credible party leader on the scene.
Spencer, do you agree?
I agree with all of that.
Well, there we are then.
There you go.
You've either won someone over or just reinforced their existing view. Thank you very much, Spencer. David in Bayswater says, how can the Conservatives still be credible after they've lost so many prominent members to reform?
Well, prominent is not the same as effective. And making noise is making noise in politics gets you attention, but that's not the point of the job. And my observation about reform is that they're very good at pointing at problems. They're very good at convincing people that they are on their side, and the things that voters are angry about, they are angry about. The Greens do the same, actually. Slightly different audience, but they do the same kind of, if you're angry about it, we're angry about it. You should vote for me and we can be angry together. That doesn't actually fix any of the problems. And one of the things that I've noticed is the pattern of people who have been defecting to reform are the people who are very good at shouting, less good at delivering. So when I was at the Home Office, for example, I decided to do it the other way round. Little bit less noise, a lot more action, which is why under my relatively short tenure, we put the changes to the visa regime, which have massively reduced the levels of immigration into the UK, something my predecessors who are now in reform failed to do. The number of asylum hotels reached its peak at 400 under my predecessor, and I handed almost half the number. That would have been Suella, who's now...
And Robert Jenrick.
Both of whom now are in reform. And at the general election, the number of asylum hotels had gone from 400 down to 215. And in the intervening couple of years, the Labour government have managed to close another dozen or so. But I and my team at the Home Office, good team at the Home Office, managed to close nearly 200 asylum hotels.
Which of the people that have gone to reform do you regret most?
I don't regret, because when someone goes to another political party, the heart moves before the body. And if they've checked out, if they want to be protest rather than delivery, then I don't regret them going, because the country now, more than has been true in a very, very, very long time, need people in politics that are focused on delivery. If you want to be a commentator, fine. It is an honourable and noble profession. It is not the same as... Thank you. It is not the same as actually being a politician. So you want to talk about politics, that's great. If you want to do politics, that's important too. The people that have gone, and as Kemi said, they are Nigel's problem now. And, she and the rest of the shadow cabinet, me included, are focused on delivering for the British people.
Right, well, your problem now is our quickfire round.
Oh, this is always easy. This is great. These never end careers.
Tomorrow, how are you celebrating St. George's Day?
I will find some interesting image of St. George somewhere on the internet, post it online, and wish everyone happy St. George's Day. And quietly, out of sight, I might have a beer after work. Maybe 2, maybe 3.
Talking of beer, would you rather go for a beer with Ollie Robbins or Morgan McSweeney?
Could I be the fly on the wall and make them have a beer with each other?
That would be good. That's your best answer so far. Do you side with Brooklyn Beckham or his parents?
So as a parent, you're going to tug at my heartstrings. It's genuinely heartbreaking to see a family row like that, either publicly or privately. And as a parent, I think I'm probably instinctively a bit more sympathetic with his mum and dad.
The Michael Jackson biopic is coming out. We've had them about Freddie Mercury, Elton John, Elvis Presley. Who should be next?
What, a musical biopic or...
Whatever you like.
I would like a Reagan biopic.
There is one.
Oh, is there?
Yeah.
Have I missed
Very
that?
good one
Have I missed
on
that?
Netflix.
Well, I'll be watching that. Maybe I might try and watch that tonight. And thank you for saying it properly. It's biopic, not biopic. It's biopic.
Yeah. Ridiculous. Yeah. And finally, one that you'll really enjoy. Have Arsenal bottled it?
Oh.
Like a dagger through your heart.
I'm not going to say yes, because I've got that silly I've got that silly belief that if I say it, that somehow me saying it on the radio would maybe make it true. So I'm going to say, no, they haven't. It's a blip, and they are going to accelerate, and we'll get at least half the 4 results that
You've got Woody in the gallery pumping his fist at all of that. So anyway, thank you very much for coming in, James. We have already done a Liberal Democrat phone-in. We're doing a Labour phone-in next week. We have invitations out to Reform and the Greens as well, so hopefully that'll come off too. You are listening to LBC. In the next hour, we will convene our cross-question panel. We have with us Dan Hodges, columnist for the Mail on Sunday, Nashaba Khan, Labour MP for Gillingham and Rainham, Jerome Mayhew, Conservative Shadow Transport Minister and MP for Broadland and Fakenham, and Dr Danny Chambers, Liberal Democrat MP for Winchester. And he's a vet, don't you know? They are here to answer your questions. 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp us on that number. You can text 84850, and of course you can watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 8 o'clock, the EU's warned summer holidays could be under threat because of the rising price of jet fuel. Lufthansa's cancelled 20 short-haul flights, saying they aren't viable. Anita Menderata is a tourism advisor to the UN and says the war in Iran is creating tension.
It's putting the price of fuel very high, which is going to be translated naturally into the cost of air travel.
The government says there's no shortage of jet fuel for UK airlines. Iran says it hasn't decided if it'll take part in fresh peace talks. It's accusing a ceasefire extension by America of being a ploy to buy time for surprise strikes. Social media lawyers told LBC it's naive to think platforms can be trusted without regulation. The House of Commons has again rejected a ban on under-16s from using social media. Matthew Bergman from the Social Media Victims Law Centre told LBC platforms prey on vulnerability.
These companies have proven time and time again that they have rejected common sense safety solutions. They prey upon the underdeveloped mental, emotional and neurologic capabilities of young people.
Social media firms say they support vulnerable young people. And Chelsea have sacked head coach Liam Rossinier after 7 defeats. He only arrived at Stamford Bridge in January. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 17 points at 10,480. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather, dry with clear spells tonight, a low of 1 degree. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
You probably think you're pretty good at multitasking behind the wheel. I mean, you have to multitask to drive. So what's wrong with checking your phone? The thing is, your brain simply doesn't work. Even a quick look at a message, for quick reply, affects your concentration and makes you less able to react to hazards. If you use a mobile phone while driving, you're 4 times more likely to crash. Think. Put your phone away.
I've looked after my kids since they were born. Now they've got kids. I still want to look after them. I don't want them struggling to make decisions about my money or my health if I can't. So we made a lasting power of attorney. Now, if I can't speak for myself, they'll speak for me. It's a weight off for all of us, isn't it?
Yes, Mum. Lasting power of attorney. Search your voice, your decision.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It's 4 minutes past 8 here on LBC. It's time for Wednesday's Cross Question. Joining me on the panel today, we have next to me Dr. Danny Chambers, Liberal Democrat MP for Winchester. You may remember he did an hour with me on veterinary stuff recently because he is actually a vet. Next to him is not a vet, Dan Hodges, although he does want to carry out some... Well, I suppose it's possible, isn't it? He is columnist for the Mail on Sunday. There's been much in evidence on the media this week over all of the vetting. I'm sure we'll come to that. To my right, it's Nashaba Khan, Labour MP for Gillingham and Raynham. Welcome back to you. And we have Jerome Mayhew, Conservative Shadow Transport Minister and MP for Broadland and Fakenham. They're here to answer your questions on 0345 6060 973. You can WhatsApp if you can't phone, and you can text 84850 and watch us on Global Player, the LBC app and the LBC YouTube channel.
Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Cross question. Watch live on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Right, our first question is a text question. It comes from Danny, who says, with vehicle and jet fuel prices still really high, what action should be taken to help people and also businesses like airlines out? Jerome.
Yeah, so we've got fuel prices have gone through the roof. Partly that's because of what's happening in the Middle East, but they're unnaturally high anyway because of the taxes which the government has placed on them. So you've got the green taxes, you've got the carbon tax. If you look at electricity, for example, only 25% of the cost that you pay is the wholesale price. The whole of the rest of it is additional costs which the government puts on. So we have a cheap power plan which we are inviting the government to accept, cancel the carbon tax, cancel the green subsidies, and then knock VAT off electricity for the next 3 years, and you can knock £200 off people's retail prices.
How do you pay for that?
By cancelling the subsidies which they're designed to pay for. So if you get rid of the subsidies, that's the cost that you're paying, then you can cancel the taxes as well.
Do you not think that we've now got into a habit as a society that every time there's some sort of crisis, whether it's the war in Ukraine or what's happening in the Middle East, that the government must come to the rescue of various industries and indeed us as individuals? Never used to be like that, did it?
That's true, and you're right, and we have to get out of that habit. I think it grew very substantially out of our response from COVID. But this is something different. This is the price of energy, which is the basis, the fundamental basis of any economy. And we've gone down the wrong route, in my view, that we've loaded costs onto our electricity. So it's the second, I think I'm right in saying it's the second most expensive consumer electricity price in the world. Then it's not surprising that we have a struggling economy. So you've got to raise taxation somewhere, but this is the wrong place to raise it on energy, which then stymies the economy and also hurts people in the cost of living crisis.
Going back to Danny's question, no help for airlines.
Well, I think the problem with airlines isn't going to be so much the price, it's going to be the availability. And what we need is a government that plans ahead for this. So what I'm hearing from the Department of Transport is there's been no advanced planning on this. So the government's going to be caught with their trousers down.
Nashaba.
Well, I think, first of all, when it's come to fuel duty, the Chancellor froze it, and we were clear that we will continue to monitor this situation. It is continually changing. We've just talked about the situation in the Middle East, which is having a huge impact on this, and the Strait of Hormuz is absolutely key to this, and that's why the government needs to be working on how we ensure that we can ensure movement across there as quickly as possible in the right way, and that's the conversations that are happening at the minute. But equally, you picked up on it there, Iain, we've got to start looking at this differently. We've got to start looking at how do we become more self-sustainable on this, and that's exactly the priorities that the government are putting forward about how do we create those clean sources of fuel and energy that we need to have as a country that makes us less prone to these global issues that keep on coming up time and time again and are showing no sign of abating in the immediate future. And we've got to really think carefully about how we do that, and that is where the government has actually got their priorities right on this in terms of how we can invest and change that so that longer term we have far more sustainable ways of accessing fuel.
Wouldn't it be a good idea, though, and I detect there is some movement within government on this, and maybe sort of among Labour backbenchers too, that maybe to cut some of these green levies and green taxes, to even if it's only in the short term?
So the green levies are really important in terms of our longer term strategy around green renewables and energy. And I think it is important that we don't lose sight of that. But of course, this is such a fast-moving situation. It's something that we have to look at. And I know that the Chancellor and others are really keen to continue to review this in the immediate future because we do recognise that we've got to look at the impact across all our industries.
Dan Hodges.
Well, to answer the question, I'm going to agree with you. I mean, in relation to the airlines, which the question was specifically about, the government shouldn't do anything. The thing that should be done is that the airlines are going to need to absorb these costs themselves in the form of lower profits, and if necessary, in the form of lower salaries for the people who work within those companies. But there should be, under no circumstances, in my view, as you said, should we have another situation where every time there is a crisis, it is the taxpayer that's asked to foot the bill. If we do get to a situation where particular British airlines do teeter on the edge of insolvency, then we may have to look at government action. But that government action should involve bringing them back into public ownership, and that's the option. That's the option I'd give them, because time and time again, we've seen this with crisis going back to the collapse of the banks. The private sector. Often the private sector that were originally public-owned assets turn around and say we need a handout. They're given the handout, and then they go back to making very significant profits. And every time it's the taxpayer has to pay. And at some point, someone needs to draw a line under that. And I think this is a good chance to do that.
Danny?
Well, I think this is energy sovereignty and energy security is absolutely vital. And the fact that we're reliant on oil prices when we've got such an unstable geopolitical situation is going to be a recurring problem. And I also think it shows an astounding lack of judgment by Kemi Badenoch calling on the UK to go into Iran with Donald Trump.
She didn't. She didn't.
She was very, very critical that we were not right there in the first wave when Donald Trump launched that idiotic invasion, and without recognising that this is not only, he had no plan, he doesn't know how he's going to get out of this war, but also it's directly affecting people in the UK with the cost of living and energy prices. And we need to make sure that we're not at the whims of whoever happens to be making geopolitical decisions at the time, people like Donald Trump. And I think that showed an astounding lack of judgment.
But do you think there should be any help for industries like the aviation sector?
I do think individuals need help. I mean, I'm a very rural constituency. There's no public transport. People have to drive. And one thing Lib Dems are calling for is a reduction on fuel duty for people who need to be able to drive. But I don't think airlines need help at the moment. I mean, that, like you say, we can't bail out everyone every time.
Jerome, you wanted to intervene then?
Yeah, it's a straw man argument from Danny. Kemi Badenoch never advocated that we go into Iran. What she said is in the early days, when your key strategic ally, the United States, asked for permission to use their aircraft on our bases, then we should have said yes. The Prime Minister vacillated. First he said no, then 36 hours later he was forced to say yes. All he succeeded in doing was peeing off everyone. He annoyed our key ally. He also annoyed everyone else shortly afterwards. So it was a really bad position to be in. But Kemi never advocated going into Iran. It's clearly just a false statement from both Labour and the Liberal Democrats, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry, Jerome, that's not what happened. I mean, it was very clear what she was advocating. It was very clear the way that the Conservatives were pitching this and talking about it, that they wanted us to rush into this. And actually, I think it's quite disingenuous to suggest that the Prime Minister somehow got this wrong, given that he approached it with pragmatism, and it was absolutely the right decision in this case. And it's something that members of the public are saying regularly, that they are glad that we did not rush into this without thinking straight or considering what the consequences might be, which is exactly what Kemi Badenoch wanted.
She said it was a matter of national security to support the US in this invasion.
But she didn't actually say that we should be going along with Israel and America in bombing Iran, did she? She did say, as Jerome says, that our air bases should be allowed to be used just as they have been in the past.
But not for offensive action. I mean, why would we want to get drawn into this, firstly from a moral point of view, from a legal point of view, but even from a cost of living point of view? There's no advantage in this, and there's no advantage in the UK being involved in this.
But you could argue that it's essentially shattered all the work that Keir Starmer had built up over 18 months in building a relationship with Donald Trump.
you can't put a relationship with someone like Donald Trump, who is erratic. He is not consistent. We can't have a foreign policy designed around the whims of someone who you can't predict and doesn't seem to know what his own foreign policy is going to be from one day to the next.
OK. Right, we will move on to another subject in just a few moments' time. Keep your calls coming, 0345 6060 973. It's 8:15.
This is LBC.
Your time is valuable. Your perspective should be too. The Economist cuts through the noise with the stories that truly shape your world.
How can you believe that a new regime won't crush you just like the previous one?
Online scams are stranger than they've ever been.
When the world's turned upside down, know which way is up. Read, watch, or listen to The Economist.
Oh, you want weight loss advice?
Weight loss? Actually, what you want to do is...
I got my weight loss secret from my mother, who got it from her mother's my mother. tip Weight loss? No, forget that. You just keep dancing. Dragon fruit. Podcast. Advice.
Or you could go to MedExpress. MedExpress. Healthcare without the noise. Go to medexpress.co.uk/weight loss.
Ali 60mg hard capsules contain orlistat for overweight adults with a BMI of 28+. Follow a reduced calorie, low fat diet. Always read the label.
When you're smiling, the whole world smiles with you.
Life feels better with a smile. Banning Dental Group Clinics. Modern, comfortable and affordable dentistry for all. See online for our price match promise. Keep on smiling.
Keep on smiling, keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles with you.
banningdental.co.uk.
I'm Will Buxton.
I'm Naomi Schiff.
I'm David Coulthard.
And I'm Jolie Sharp.
This is Up to Speed. Available every Monday and Thursday on Global Player or wherever you get your podcasts.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
They're all gossiping with each other. 16 minutes past 8 on Cross Question. We have with us Mail on Sunday columnist Dan Hodges, Nashaba Khan, Labour MP for Gillingham and Rainham, Jerome Mayhew, Conservative Shadow Transport Minister and MP for Broadland and Fakenham, God's Own County. I always say that about Essex as well, so I suppose I should say about Kent, shouldn't I? Dr. Danny Chambers is Liberal Democrat MP for the beautiful city of Winchester. Right, let's go to a WhatsApp question from Shahid, who says, what do you think of Keir Starmer's defence at today's PMQs as to why he sacked Ollie Robbins? And do you think he really would have blocked Mandlesson from becoming ambassador to America if Ollie Robbins had told him the news that Mandlesson had failed the security vetting? Dan Hodges, you've been very vocal on this over the last week.
Well, not just the last week. I mean, literally as we're coming on air, there is another developing story this evening about Prime Minister's questions. Well, I like many others, thought it was a bit of a damp squib, but what's emerged is, it's quite staggering how he's managed to do this again. Keir Starmer has clearly misled the House again, but this time there's no way he's going to get out of this one, because I mean, I actually got a call early this evening, actually from the minister, who said, their words were that they're really starting to panic in Downing Street this evening, because Keir Starmer went off script. And what he said, and this is easily verifiable and is now being verified, is he basically said that there was no pressure was brought to bear whatsoever on civil servants over the Mandlesson affair. Now, that was obviously easily disprovable by Ollie Robbins' evidence, but also crucially, what he did, he prayed in aid. He quoted into the record, the parliamentary record, a number of statements by Ollie Robbins, which made it appear that Ollie Robbins had said he hadn't been put under pressure. Now, MPs watching, journalists, were somewhat perplexed by that. Anyway, it's emerged this evening that he falsely quoted Ollie Robbins. He only took half the quote from Ollie Robbins and misrepresented what Ollie Robbins said. Incredibly, as I said, this was a PMQ session where he attempted to accuse Kemi Badenoch and attack Kemi Badenoch for, in his view, falsely claiming that he'd misled the House. And it now transpires in that very session he's gone and misled the House again. And tomorrow, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. It's going to be very interesting to see what the Speaker does. It will be very interesting to see what the opposition parties do. Because at the moment, under parliamentary rules, Starmer has to come back to the House tomorrow and correct the record. But again, we're back in the same place. You know, every time Keir Starmer opens his mouth on this, he says something which is then proven to have been incorrect.
Nashaba, I mean, when this sort of thing happens, the Prime Minister does seem to have an unfortunate record of throwing people under the bus. And you can imagine that he said, well, it's not my fault. I was given that quote. It's not. Of course, I didn't check it. I was trusting people, and they've let me down. I mean, that I can just imagine him coming out with that as the excuse.
Well, firstly, can I say that this entire saga, I think, has just been terrible. And I think it's right that questions are asked. I think it's right that we probe into what has happened. And I'm glad that the Prime Minister apologised, that he took the decision that he did on Mandlesson, because frankly, I don't think it was the right decision to put Peter Mandlesson in this.
Did you at the time?
Particular role? Well, I mean, obviously, I had
I did think it was the right decision at the time.
I had absolutely no say in the decision whatsoever, as you can imagine.
No.
But
I wasn't alleging that you did.
No, I didn't. But it's not necessarily. For me, he was there to do the job as ambassador to the United States. But I don't think that, given some of his background and what we know about him, that it was potentially going to be the right course. Is my personal view.
But were you sitting there yesterday when Keir Starmer, and indeed on Monday, was making his defence? And what was going through your head when you were listening to it?
Well, what I will say is that I believe that when the Prime Minister came to the House, he was really clear about the fact that he was, that he hadn't had this information, that he had not intended to mislead the House in any way, shape or form, that he was deeply angry about the fact that key bits of this vetting process had not been given to him. And I also reflect back on watching Ollie Robinson at the Foreign Affairs Select Committee giving evidence, and actually it was certainly very human in how he came across and how he talked about his job and how he felt about it. But I also reflect on the comments that were made by Emily Thornberry at the end, that she felt, as the chair of the committee, that actually the decision to fire him was the right one, because he had taken that decision without having had the security vetting, without allowing
Did she say that?
ministers. Yes, she did. She said that if she felt on reflection, it was the right decision. So,
can I just say she didn't say it in the session, but she said it the day after.
She did not say it in the session.
Okay.
Apologies. Yes,
That's
sorry, she did not say it in the session. She said it afterwards when questioned about it later.
Do you not think that was a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, though? There was no due process. Clearly the Prime Minister was angry, and I think personally I would have been if I'd been in his position too. But to sack the permanent secretary just like that, without really allowing him, presumably, to. I think they had a phone call. That was about it. You wouldn't sack a junior member of staff like that, would you?
Well, I don't know what the process was behind that particular sacking, but what I do know is that there clearly had been the case that Ollie Robbins had not provided the information to ministers or to the Prime Minister, and that decision was taken on those grounds.
Okay. Danny?
Well, I'm a vet, as you said in your introduction.
You're a politician.
Yeah,
now.
I'm a politician now, but as a vet, if I broke the rules and lied about it,
You're not going to put the Prime Minister down, are you?
Yeah, put him out of his misery.
But if I broke the rules and lied about it, I'd get struck off, and rightly so. And so would doctors, so would teachers. There's a lot of people in a lot of professions that have to maintain a minimum standard of in public life, and I think people get frustrated that politicians don't seem to be held to the same level of accountability, and that needs to change. And one of the reasons there's so much distrust in politics is because, we had the chaos of the Boris Johnson years. And one thing that Starmer had for him is that he might be boring, he might not have a big personality, but he was followed procedure and there would be no chaos. And instead, we've got the chaos and no personality. So there's been no change. And I think it's really it's really disappointing for people who are desperate to have a steady tiller on government, and that it's just been U-turns, chaos.
But if you were Prime Minister in these circumstances, okay, you'll say, well, I wouldn't have appointed him in the first place, but we are where we are. Would you not expect to be told by the Foreign Office if your appointed person to the job had failed the security vetting?
Well, the whole situation seems ridiculous, Because you're right, wouldn't have appointed him in the first place. Someone who's been fired a couple of times already, and we're talking about Matthew Doyle as well. We've had good people, like Karen Pierce, who was an ambassador in Washington and doing a good job and a good reputation and a lot of experience, has lost her job over this as well. It seems as though the whole culture of number 10 of the Foreign Office, how people report up to the Prime Minister, seems to be broken. Now, what is the reason for that? Are people too scared to give him the information he needed? Did he put pressure on civil servants unduly so they knew that the decision wouldn't be changed? You have you set a culture in an organisation when you're head of the organisation, and I certainly want my staff to be able to speak to me about any issues they have with anything or anyone, and I don't want them to feel scared to do that. And I don't know how this breakdown in communication seemed to happen, but at the end of the day, we're now talking about this instead of the cost of living crisis, and it's a nightmare.
Just on that, we've got a call on that direct point, but firstly, Jerome.
I think we need to take a step back here. So we're focusing on this minutiae. Would the Prime Minister have changed his mind if he'd known this one detail? Well, there are two processes here before the appointment, or should have happened before the appointment. One was the vetting, but the other one was due diligence. So the due diligence process produced a report which the Prime Minister admitted to me personally on Monday that he saw before he made the decision to appoint Peter Mandlesson. And in that document, it highlighted that Peter Mandlesson had the relationship with Epstein, which is deeply concerning, but it also, and this is almost, no, it's not as bad, but it's as relevant, is that he had been a director of Sistemo, which is a Russian company in the arms industry, very close to Putin, with known spies on the board of Sistemo, and that Peter Mandlesson was a director for years after Putin had already invaded Ukraine in the Crimea. And it raised express flags saying there are severe reputational risks associated with this person. You don't need even to get as far as the vetting process. But the Prime Minister read that, didn't give a stuff, thought it was worth the risk to make him ambassador, to make the announcement of ambassador before vetting had taken place. And now we're complaining about whether he was warned a second time by his senior
I want to hear more from Dan on this, but first let's take this call from David in Camden. David.
Thank you. I personally think it's all a bit ridiculous. People are living paycheck to paycheck, and the amount of hours that have been wasted in Parliament and in the media on this story, and it's ridiculous. I think you all need to catch yourselves on. There's real problems in the world, and we're wasting hours talking about Mandlesson. And your man there says, well, there's a cost of living crisis. It's Kenny Badenoch's choice whether she asks about the cost of living crisis or Peter Mandlesson, and she chooses to waste weeks and weeks and weeks of PMQs on Mandlesson, and it's ridiculous. You all need to catch yourselves on.
All right, Dan, you need to catch yourself on.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously I understand that view, but the point is this issue goes to a lot of fundamental issues. It obviously goes to the issue of the Prime Minister's personal integrity, which Keir Starmer himself, in opposition, as we all remember, said was a fundamental reason why the Tories should be booted out of office, and obviously pledged to transform that. It goes. We're talking about the issues of the war in Iran. This goes to the very heart of our relationship with one of our closest allies. As I wrote at the weekend, this is not just a political scandal now. This is a major national security scandal. And as the point was raised, I mean, I actually wrote a story about Sistema, and as somebody said to me, that company that Mandlesson was part of and was the director of was in the terms that was given to me was literally swimming with Russian spies. Yeah. So I completely understand why people struggling with the cost of living have other priorities, but this is a very important issue. There's one thing I would just also add to. However, the view you heard expressed there is the view that I am starting to hear now very much from members of the Cabinet and from Labour MPs, and a shift has taken place in the last 48 hours. Again, I've written about this for tomorrow. Members of the Cabinet, including members of the Cabinet who up to this point have been very, very loyal to Keir Starmer, are basically saying there is no way we're going to get out from under this. There is no way we can stop this. Obviously, we're talking about it this week. We're going to be talking about it next week when we have Morgan McSweeney appearing before the Foreign Affairs Select Committee. We're going to have Ollie Robbins' predecessor appearing before there. We're going to have other officials this week. Every time they're there, the story will get kicked on.
Well, and when all the papers
we
come
still
out.
haven't had the papers yet.
That won't be till May.
The government strategy was initially to get that out before the local elections. That's not now going to be afterwards. That's before we get the resolution of the police investigation, potential court cases. There's a European fraud office investigation into Mandlesson. This is just going to go on and on and on. And the very important issues that your caller were talking about, there is no way Keir Starmer and his government, and a government led by Keir Starmer, is going to be able to deal with and start to address these issues. And people in Cabinet and people on the Labour benches, I think for the first time now, I mean, I think they kind of knew it, but they now realise it more than anything else. And that's why we are going to see, in my view, over the next few days, some movement on this issue from within the Labour Party.
Nishaba,
I thought you might come to me.
Well, I think it's only fair to let you respond to what Dan has alleged there, because if his sources are right, I mean, is that what you're hearing? I mean, I know obviously you're a loyal Labour member, you're a loyal backbencher, but in the end, you will be able to test the waters and sort of feel if things are shifting.
Well, I mean, look, certainly there are colleagues out there who have said this publicly. However, I go back to what David was saying. I mean, look, none of us came into politics to be sitting here debating this in the way that we are. And I recognise why questions need to be asked, and I recognise why people are interested in this and why they want to know what's happened. I completely understand that. But when I stood for election in my constituency, it's because I wanted to take on the challenges that we're seeing and those that David has talked about and the issues that we face and essentially what 14 years of Conservative government had done to my life.
But are you angry that all of that agenda is being sort of...
It is certainly frustrating me that this is now something that we have been, and I said that earlier as well, that it is deeply frustrating that this is happening and that our time is being taken up in terms of the focus that we should be having in terms of tackling some of these issues, the big issues that we've got happening across the world, which, by the way, can I say that I think Keir has done a very good job in terms of navigating, that we aren't able to spend the time that we need to focusing on that. So look, we will see what happens over the next few days in terms of the debate in Parliament and the questions that are asked, but I hope we can get back to the business of trying to solve the issues that the country is facing, because that's ultimately what we're here to do.
Jerome, I know you couldn't hear David's call, but I mean, it's basically saying, why aren't we talking about the cost of living and all the big important issues rather than spending so much time on this? Are you finding that, and you and Danny will both be presumably knocking on doors for the local elections, are you finding that people are reflecting what David has said there, or are they actually really concerned by all of this?
They are concerned. They're concerned about national security, but I think they're also cross that this government is paralysed by this scandal, and they're not actually able to run the country at the moment. They're not focusing on the cost of living because they're crisis managing in number 10. What do you think number 10 is working on tonight? It is not the cost of living. It's what the Prime Minister, how he's going to dig himself out of the Mandlesson farrago tomorrow. They are thinking about 12 hours' time and whether they've still got a job on Monday. They are not running the country, and it is chaotic at number 10. And what you've noticed, I've been in Parliament all day, the mood has shifted amongst Labour MPs. You can feel it. And there was a Cabinet Minister was quoted tonight saying that he has lost confidence in the Prime Minister and that the Cabinet should...
Anonymous, of course.
Obviously.
Danny, what are the good burgers of Winchester telling you?
They were wanting boring competence after years of Boris Johnson, and they got boring but no competence, and all the U-turns, all the scandals. It's really, really frustrating. But at the end of the day, it's local government that affects people's lives on a day-to-day basis, and they're really, really angry about potholes. That's one thing they're absolutely furious about. They're really worried about getting GP appointments. They're really, really worried about the cost of living. And my constituency is very rural. There's a lot of people using heating oil. It's shot up by, nearly doubled in a couple of weeks. These are the issues that come up time and time again. This is very important, as Dan said. It's very important for sort of standards of public life. It's important for the function of government, this issue. But most people are just angry that the government are using up their headspace and time on this, an unnecessary scandal, when they could be trying to fix people's problems.
Well, Roy, John, Glenn, they've all just sent in WhatsApp messages saying they feel this is a Westminster bubble issue. John says he couldn't care less about the Mandlesson drama. We're getting a similar response on our YouTube live stream this evening too. I do care less. Well, I do care about this because I think there are huge constitutional issues at stake here, lots of national security issues, and I think everybody ought to be concerned. But I take the point that the life is being sucked out of other debates because of it. Right, we'll take more of your questions in just a moment. It's 8:34. News headlines with Daryl Jackson.
The EU's warned people's summer holidays could be under threat because of the rising price of jet fuel. Airlines are urging the government here to do more to help, but ministers say there are no shortages here. Donald Trump claims Iran has taken a step towards a peace deal by agreeing to release 8 women who were on death row. The US president had called for the protesters to be freed as the first part of any agreement. And the House of Commons has rejected a proposal to ban under-16s from using social media for a third time. A consultation on the issue closes at the end of May. LBC weather, dry with clear spells tonight, cloudy in the north and east, a low of -1 degree.
This is LBC.
3, 2, 1, 0% APR on an all-electric Mini Cooper. What was that, Luton? Handling is extraordinary, centre of gravity so low, and it could be ours with a 15% deposit and 3-year term. OK, Luton, reroute me to the nearest Mini retailer now.
Land a new all-electric Mini Cooper with 0% APR. Report to your Mini retailer today. Mini UK is a credit broker. Ordered and delivered by 30th of June. PCP finance with Mini Financial Services. Subject to status. 18+. T's and C's apply. mini.co.uk/Cooper.
Buying a home on a holiday park was the retreat you always wanted. But then came unexpected site fee increases. And that was before the dramatic loss in value. If you bought a home on a holiday park in the UK, you may have been missold. holidayparkadvicecentre.co.uk could help you receive thousands in compensation. Text ASSIST to 78900. That's ASSIST to 78900.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Ooh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC.
8:37 on LBC. We have with us Dan Hodges from the Mail on Sunday, Labour MP Nashaba Khan, Conservative MP Jerome Mayhew, and Lib Dem MP Dr Danny Chambers. Right, David, and we've already done David in Camden. Let's go to the next one. Mick is in Poole. It's a text question. When do you think Keir Starmer will resign? Right, short and sweet. Jerome?
I thought it would be in several months' time. I think it'll be in the next fortnight.
Nashaba?
Never. I've responded never.
Danny?
I think given he's shown a huge lack of judgment and now there's going to be some terrible local elections for him, I don't see how he can survive much further past the local elections.
Dan?
Sometime within the next 8 weeks.
Do you think it'll be the local elections? That will be the actual spur?
Yeah, I think it will, although I think the decision's been taken now, actually. Oh yeah, I completely agree. I think the mood in the last 24 hours has shifted.
He hasn't taken it.
No. But I think the decision, if necessary, will be taken out of his hands. We're not going to wake up and find out he's resigned tomorrow. What will happen is there will be, I suspect. What I was being told this afternoon, this evening, is that there is going to be an attempt to sort of give him an honourable route out, staged exit. I would expect he will pre-announce, as we've seen before. He'll pre-announce his departure, and he will announce that he'll hand over at the party conference. That's kind of what I'm starting to pick up.
But do you not think that what could save him is the fact there is a lack of a viable alternative?
No, because what's happened, and this is one of the things that's happened, is the mood has gone from we quite like to get rid of him but we haven't got a candidate, to look, this can't go on. We have to get rid of him. We're just going to have to find a candidate. And there are a couple of options. One is I think we'll start hearing more over the next sort of 48, 72 hours about maybe some sort of caretaker leader coming from within the cabinet, safe pair of hands.
Bring back Harriet Harman.
I mean, some of the names, people like Hilary Benn, people like Yvette Cooper, John Healey's been mentioned. But then there's the other thing of how it's described to me as, and then they'll sit in for a place for a while, and then there'll be some sort of what was called a celebrity death match, in which Andy Burnham will be given time to find a seat, Angela Rayner may throw a hat in the ring, Wes may be able to sort of extricate himself from his own proximity to Peter Mandlesson, maybe Ed Miliband will want to have a go at it as well, and it'll be managed that way. But as I said, completely agree. Everyone I'm speaking to says something's changed in the last 48 hours.
Well, politics is never boring, is it? Let's go to a WhatsApp question from Sarah. Whose responsibility is it to stop kids seeing harmful things on the internet? Now, tonight MPs, or this afternoon MPs, have again voted against a ban on under-16s accessing social media platforms. Danny?
Well, as mental health spokesperson, this is something we've been working really hard on, and the position we've come up with for the Liberal Democrats is one that is supported by the NSPCC, where we have a sort of age rating for different social media platforms, a bit like you see with films, to protect children from addictive algorithms and from inappropriate content. And that would effectively mean a ban on current social media for children. I think it needs to happen. And the other thing we're focusing on very much on is chatbots, which are often integrated into social media platforms, but people and children not understanding that these are machines without emotions. They don't care about you. And when you hear that sort of 30% of adults and a lot of children are relying on them for mental health advice and for emotional support, and sometimes that advice they're getting can be very dangerous, so it doesn't challenge inappropriate views like misogyny. It can give very inappropriate advice. It can teach people who have got eating disorders how to access weight loss drugs and how to get around the safeguards. These are very, very dangerous, and we think they need to be regulated aside from social media. They're part of social media often, but they need a specific regulation to get these in hand to protect people's health.
You haven't, bear in mind the question, you haven't mentioned a parental role here, because I think that was what the question was getting at. Is it not parents' responsibility rather than the state's to stop harmful things being shown to children on the internet?
It partly is, and they're trying. I mean, I meet parents all the time in my role as mental health spokesperson. What I'm finding is teachers want this ban, parents want the ban, and kids want these ban, but you need support to enact that. The kids can get around. Kids are better at using their phones and accessing content online than parents are. So it's a bit like smoking. It's like smoking's the new, scrolling's the new smoking, really, and it also it empowers parents to be able to ban, because if everyone else in the class has a smartphone and access to social media and you're the only one saying that they're not allowed it, you're excluding them, you're making them feel different, you're having arguments. Some parents say they spend so much of their time fighting with their kids about access to social media. If it is illegal, at least parents can say, like smoking, this is illegal, you're not allowed to do it. Now, you might argue
but you're
that
not proposing to make it illegal.
We are. Yeah, I mean, our set of proposals would make current social media illegal for kids under 16, because if you look at the age ratings, the type of content they get and the type of addictive algorithms would make it illegal.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that someone couldn't invent a platform that would be appropriate for children, but at the moment, they don't exist.
Dan?
I disagree. I think the priority, to answer the question, I think the priority rests with parents. I think we have a culture now of any issue that comes up. The sort of default position is the government, the state must step in and must act. And it's not that I don't think we do need a benign state. I think we do. But we were touching on this before. There are so many issues that are facing society, so many major issues such as defence, such as the cost of living crisis, economic inequality, sort of extremism on the both and left and right of our politics. the government just spends so much of its bandwidth getting sucked into trying to micromanage these various aspects of society. And I think, in the one sense, we consistently say, and we are very critical about politicians, politics, why governments don't do things that they promise to do. And I think that's right. But I think equally it's right, to sort of paraphrase the JFK thing about, what can my government do for me? What should we all be doing to allow the government to get on with the serious things that government should be doing? And I think, obviously there are issues in relation to social media access, but when I was first growing up, there were issues in relation to kids watching too much telly and various other issues. And the responsibility of that has to ultimately rest with the parents. It's not just that we increasingly infantilise children, we also increasingly infantilise adults as well.
But it is tough to expect parents to fight against some of the wealthiest and high-tech companies in the world, with some of the best engineers creating horrendously addictive algorithms. The power imbalance is very different there, isn't it?
Yeah, but I'm afraid that's part of the responsibility of being a parent. The reality is that's part of what all of us that are parents have to do. We take it upon ourselves to have children, and then we cannot turn around, across the gamut, be it issues such as welfare or issues such as this, and simply say, right, I've had a child, it's over to the state. It's over to Keir Starmer to decide how we manage our.
But we didn't just say parents have to stop the kids smoking. I mean, they should, but we did make it illegal, didn't we?
Let's bring in.
Yeah, obviously there are certain issues.
Nashaba.
Personally, I'd like to ban myself from social media. I know. Well, it doesn't sometimes feel that way, and I think that's part of the problem, because it's just, you feel like you have to be part of this world. And I'm just really thankful that I didn't grow up as a teenager with social media around me, because I think it has the power to be incredibly toxic. Now, I take what you're saying, Dan, about things like television and parental responsibility. I do, but I do think this is a bit of a different beast. And the level of information that is out there on social media and how it's being used, what it's doing, it's quite different, I think, to watching television, for example, which is still relatively regulated in the way that you access it. I think for me, personally, and I would support a future ban on this, but I am keen to see what comes out of the consultations and the conversations that are happening. I do also take the point that if we are going to do something like this, we've got to be conscious of the fact that people will find a way around it. And it's not just simply saying we've banned this. I don't think it's quite as easy, but there are other countries that are already leading the way. So I think there are things that we can learn.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah, normally I'd be with Dan on this and I'd say, it's parents' responsibility. But I think on this one, I do disagree. I think Kemi's right that I'm a parent, I've got teenagers, and I need help. Because the thing about social media, it's not like the telly in the corner that you can turn off. It bypasses parents, and children are plugged in to their phones. My youngest child is absolutely obsessed by his phone. And I've talked to him about this ban. At first he said, you can't ban social media. I said, well, as long as everyone else gets banned as well, what do you think then? And he said, straight off, in which case I'm all for it. Because there's a huge amount of pressure on teenagers. He's now just 16. In fact, he's almost 17. I don't want to do him down. But he's grown up through this. And I think that's the instinctive reaction. There'd be a huge sense of relief for many, many teenagers if the majority of people are just off it. And you're right that you can get VPNs, you can get around it, but as long as the majority are off it, then the pressure goes.
Well, that was from Australia. I think they were saying that it's only been 60% effective, and I'm thinking, well, that's 60% more than it was before.
I think that's good enough.
Right, more questions to come. 8:47.
This is LBC.
Oh, you want weight loss advice?
Weight loss? Actually, what you want to do...
I got my weight loss secret from my mother, who got it from her mother's.
My tip
weight
is...
loss?
Forget that, you just
keep dancing. Dragon fruit.
Podcast.
Advice.
Or you could go to MedExpress. MedExpress. Healthcare without the noise. Go to medexpress.co.uk/weight loss.
Ali 60mg hard capsules contain orlistat for overweight adults with a BMI of 28+. Follow a reduced calorie, low fat diet. Always read the label.
Search Kayak for great deals on Wait, that doesn't say flights. Search Kayak for great deals on car hire? With Kayak, you can compare hundreds of car rental sites to find great deals. Even better, you see costs up front,
And if it's flexibility you're after, Kayak's got a handy free cancellation filter. Lovely stuff. So next time you're searching for car hire, at home or for your holes, search Kayak and go see for yourself.
Check your retirement savings are on track with PensionBee's easy-to-use app. Because when your pension is in a good place, you're in a good place. When investing, your capital is at risk.
Fever Tree Mediterranean Tonic Water. Who are you? Usually the mixer. The T in G&T. But your delicate fragrance. Hints of lemon thyme. When the tea's this good. Do you even need the G? Fever Tree. Straight up or mixed. It's a matter of taste.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Oh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
10 to 9, Dan Hodges is with us, Nashaba Khan, Jerome Mayhew and Dr. Danny Chambers. A question here from Annie in Cosholton. Do you sympathise with young people who say they would never fight for this country in a war? A survey by researchers at the University of Glasgow has found that a majority of 16 to 29-year-olds say they would never fight for this country in a war, arguing that conventional wars are now pointless and are politically motivated. Jerome.
We've had this time and time again throughout our history. There's a famous debate in the Oxford Union in the 1930s where the House voted that they wouldn't go to war. And I don't want to go to war either. I've been incredibly lucky, my generation. But human nature hasn't changed. We've got so much that's worth fighting for to defend our country, our society, our friends, our family, our community, that I think if the situation demanded it, I have every confidence in the younger generation, just as I would in every other previous generation of our country.
I agree with Jerome. I think that, I was very lucky to grow up feeling that war was never something that was on my doorstep, even though, of course, it was happening and we were involved. But I think that sort of, it feels like it's changing, actually. And I think that's something that is worrying and concerning, but something that I also think that we've got so much to stand up for, our values and who we are. What this does remind me, though, is a caller who called into LBC on another show a few years ago, and he was of mixed heritage, and he said on the call, so he's half Pakistani and half white British, and he said, I would be really keen, I really wanted to go and fight for this country. I thought, one day I'm going to join the army and that's what I'm going to do. And then suddenly I got caught up in this Brexit referendum debate and started to suddenly hear conversations around me that made me feel that I didn't belong in this country. And I thought to myself, why would I risk my life for a country that doesn't accept me? And that has stayed with me for years and years. And I'm now in the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme, and I've gone and met young people who are doing just this, getting trained and ready in our army, in our military. But that has stayed with me. And I do think we need to think really carefully about how we speak about ourselves as a country if we want future generations to step up.
I love it that you remember calls on LBC from years ago. Excellent. Danny.
Yeah, I'm on the Armed Forces Parliamentary Scheme as well. It's absolutely brilliant, a great insight. And I have to say, the last few decades, it's the first time we've had a severe, prolonged war in Europe. We've got a very unstable geopolitical situation. I think young people will step up if they need to. But it does show the importance of having political leaders you trust. It shows the importance of keeping it in international law, and it shows the importance of MPs having a vote on whether we go to war or not, because half the concern that the people are replying to is that they're worried that it might not be a legal war, and you want to know that you're fighting a war for the right reasons, and I think they will do if they know it's for the right reasons.
Dan?
Yeah, I agree. I'm optimistic that if the call came, it would be answered. I mean, I think we have to understand it. I think it's different. Certainly, when I was growing up, the sort of the locus for me was obviously my grandparents, etc., had experienced. My parents actually had experienced the Second World War, which was seen and is still seen rightly as being, if you like, a just war. Obviously, for a much younger generation, their locus is more obviously the legacy of Iraq. And, we're sitting here this evening and obviously we've got mayhem going on in Iran with Donald Trump's sort of, frankly, lunacy over there. The only other point I'd make is if we are going to ask our young people and expect our young people to go and fight, then I think at a minimum we should actually give them something to go and fight with. And obviously one of the issues we've got at the moment is obviously we have had a legacy from governments of all persuasions of undermining our armed forces, of running down our armed forces. We've had all the headlines about, our lack of military preparedness. I think it's legitimate for young people to say, well, if I'm going to be asked to lay my life on the line, then the government that's sending me there could actually give me the tools to finish the job.
I think last time we talked about this on my programme, we had a lot of people phoning in, young people, saying, well, if this country was about to be invaded, I absolutely would, but I'm not fighting for Estonia.
Yeah, I mean that's part of the problem, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, that's actually probably that's where we are going to have to. I mean, unfortunately, very, very possibly, that is where we're going to have to fight and defend ourselves next.
Right, let's go to another question. Wesley in Gravesend. What does the panel think of the UK reclaiming the place of the world's 5th richest economy? India has dropped down to 6th position. Why aren't we celebrating this? Now, new data released this week by the IMF shows that the... Sorry, where's it gone? So it shows that the UK has an economy worth $4.26 trillion US dollars, while India's is worth $4.15 trillion US dollars. I feel we should be playing Jerusalem now or something just to mark this, because that's the first I've heard of this. Why is nobody covering this? I mean, this is good news, isn't it, Nashaba?
It is good news, and I'm pleased to see that. But I also recognise that when you see things like that, actually the difference is whether people understand and feel what that feels like for their pocket, and that's the piece that we've got to make sure works. So are people feeling the sense that we are now the world's 5th richest economy again? And that for me is the key thing, in terms of my constituents and the people that I represent.
Jerome?
Yeah, well, this has been covered, actually, and it's not quite as good news as it sounds, although I'll take any...
come on. Come on.
The reason...
This is the party of patriotism.
There is a technical reason, and this is denominated in dollars, and it's about currency fluctuation rather than actual growth in the economy. So it's a title which, will grasp at anything, but it doesn't actually denote significant growth in our economy, as everyone listening to this programme will know from their own pay packet.
Such a killjoy.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Such a temperament.
Dan.
Yeah, well, I think Sharper said he put a finger on it. I mean, I think it's the issue of whether people are actually feeling like that we're all getting richer, and they clearly don't. I mean, obviously, the other thing is we had these figures today. I mean, when was it? Was it the start of the week or last week? We had a new set of figures that said, actually, obviously, we know there's going to be a global downturn again because of events in Iran, and that Britain is amongst one of the worst placed economies to deal with that shock. But again, to go back to the original question, why are we not all celebrating this? It's as we were talking about before, because obviously our political debate is being dominated by other issues at the moment.
Danny?
Yeah, I think international rankings on size of economy are relevant if people are not feeling that they can meet the cost of living. But growth is hugely important, and one thing that we want to do as Liberal Democrats is get back into a customs union, closer ties of Europe, break down trading barriers. That is one of the biggest fundamental things that we could be doing to turbocharge our economy and generate real growth. And people who are still supporting a hard Brexit are never going to be able to get the growth that we actually need.
Wasn't where we had a hard Brexit, but
it's pretty hard. So.
Right, I'm not even going to go there. Let's go to our fun question from Chris in Dorking. After Chelsea fired their manager, Liam Rosenior, after only 3.5 months as manager, what's the shortest time you've had a job for, and why did you leave that job so quickly? Dan?
That's a fun question. When did you last get? Remember, tell us about when you last got sacked. I was trying to think about this. I had a job. It's actually a really good job. I had a position once as Director of Communications for Transport for London.
I remember that.
Yeah, and unfortunately it was under Ken Livingstone. And I've got to be slightly careful because I think I might have signed an NDA about it. But put it this way. Put it this way. I mean, just between ourselves and the listeners, I think there were some issues about. I think there was some disagreement about actually sort of, as it were, telling the truth about what's happening to London's public transport system, and maybe there were some disagreements of nuance about that. So, and there was that, and also I think I was actually just completely useless at the job. So, just bringing all that back. Thanks for the fun question.
Danny, beat that.
Well, I've never been sacked, but I've had times in my job where I think, why on earth am I doing this? And, for example...
Particularly in the last 18 months?
Well, I was thinking more when I was a vet, like 5:30 in the morning in winter, stripped down to your waist, carving a cow covered in blood, lying in cow shit, thinking, what am I doing with my career? Why did I study for all those years at university to lie?
And then you became a Liberal Democrat MP.
And now you'd rather go back.
Stripped from the waist? No.
Not that liberal.
Jerome.
I was sacked on the first day of a job, and I deserved it. That's the awful thing. So I had a student job where I was being a removals man, house removals, and my first job was our managing director's house, and I was carrying out his dining room table, and I snapped a leg, and through total fecklessness, I was really careless, and I didn't last the rest of the day. That was it.
I promise I won't be telling Kemi Badenoch. Nishava.
I mean, I've had a fair few jobs, including selling carpets, which actually wasn't too bad at. But I didn't get fired, but I did walk out of a job after about a week and a half because it was selling double glazing and I was just really bad at it. And you didn't get paid unless you sold some double glazing, which I didn't do. So basically I was just turning up to a call centre and calling people and then going home, and I thought, this is a waste of my time and yours, so I left.
Some very... I won't bore you with mine.
Go on.
No. Well, I resigned from a lobbying company after 2 months because I was bored out of my head because none of my clients had any idea of what they wanted. I had Vauxhall Motors were one of them, and all they wanted was to be pictured with Cecil Parkinson, who was then Transport Secretary, with their prototype electric car. This was in 1990, and I arranged that. I didn't get any job satisfaction out of it, so I thought this is not for me and resigned without a job to go to. But here I am. And thank you all very much indeed. Now, in the next, on tomorrow's panel, we have the Reform UK decision-making board member, Gawain Tola, Labour's 2024 election candidate, Jovan Owusu-Nepal, plus the psychotherapist and broadcaster, Lucy Beresford. But coming up in the next hour, what would you think if the government suddenly announced that they were going to bring in a law for compulsory voting? So you would actually have to vote in elections, in referenda, or you would be fined. I'm totally against this, but I know a lot of you are totally in favour of it. But I suspect many of the people that are in favour of it don't actually vote at every election because the turnout in local elections is usually quite low, often under 30%. Aren't we made to do too many things in this country? Surely a privilege of living in a democracy is that you choose whether you want to vote or not. I think everybody should vote, but I don't think they should be made to. What do you think?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the EU's warned people summer holidays are very likely to be at risk as stocks of aviation fuel start to run low due to the Iran war. It's warned of a serious crisis over prices and potentially oversupply if the war continues. Here, the Prime Ministers discuss contingency plans with ministers and officials. Some operators have already raised ticket prices on long-haul flights. Paul Charles leads a travel consultancy firm.
They have to add the higher jet fuel prices which have kicked in as a result of the shortages or potential shortages of supply, and add to that the higher costs caused by higher inflation.
The Department of Transport said yesterday there is no shortage of jet fuel here. Well, the White House says Donald Trump has not set a deadline for the end of the ceasefire with Iran. The president announced an indefinite extension to the truce yesterday, with Tehran claims is a ploy to buy time. His press secretary, Caroline Levitt, says the US is completely strangling Iran's economy.
They're losing $500 million a day. The Karg Island is completely full. They can't move oil in and out. They
they can't even pay their own people as a result of this economic leverage that President Trump has inflicted over them. So he's satisfied with that as we await their response, and we will see. The president has not set a firm deadline to receive an Iranian proposal, unlike some of the reporting I've seen today.
The House of Commons has again rejected a proposal to ban under-16s from using social media. Ministers have promised to set out their plans on a potential ban once a consultation closes at the end of May. Lawyer Matthew Bergman led the recent landmark case against social media firms in the US and has been speaking to LBC this evening.
These companies have more money than God and are using every dollar and every bit of legislative artifice to try to pull the wool over not just the American people, but legislators in the UK and throughout the world.
A man's been cleared of the manslaughter of his wife in Wiltshire, as well as controlling and raping her. Taryn Baird took her own life in 2017. 44-year-old Christopher Tribus says he was away working on many of the days his wife made allegations. And Chelsea have sacked their head coach, Liam Rossinier. He'd been in charge for 15 weeks. In the city, the FTSE 100's closed down 17 points at 10,480. The pound buys $1.35 and €1.15. LBC weather, dry with clear spells tonight, cloudy in the north and east, a low of -1 degree. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Daryl Jackson.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Iain Dale.
It's 9:05 on LBC. We are going to talk about compulsory voting in this hour, because it is a subject that comes up from time to time whenever the government decides to introduce a new Representation of the People Act, where they change the rules on voting, who can vote, how elections are conducted, etc. People say, well, why don't we have compulsory voting? They have it in Australia, almost as if that's a clinching argument. Well, just because they have it in Australia, we should have it here. I've never really bought that. However, this is from Rob, who says, I'm an Australian living over here in the UK. My whole adult life, I've had compulsory voting, and I'm completely for it. It makes people pay attention. It makes people get up and makes them own their voice. Well, that's the argument in favour of it, I suppose. But the reason we're talking about this today is not because the government has got any intention of introducing this, but because there has been a new survey out, which it's done by Savanta for the Telegraph. And if you look at the figures, it is quite stark. In the 18 to 34 age group, 56% think that there should be compulsory voting. Only 12% are against. You go up to the 35 to 54 age group, and it's 52%. And then 54%, 55 plus. In local elections, it's actually more, 59% for 18 to 34s, and then 55, and then 51% for older age groups. And for referendums, I always want to say referenda, I'm not quite sure what's the correct one there, but anyway, 57% for 18 to 34s, 59% for 35 to 54s, and 62% for 55 pluses. But, I mean, should people get some sort of, well, it wouldn't be a criminal record, would it? Because it would be a civil penalty. You'd effectively have a fixed penalty notice. In Australia, I think it's only about 10 quid. So I'm not sure that's enough to really make people decide that they would have to vote. But surely one of the privileges of living in a democratic society is that we aren't forced to do this, that we make a choice. And if we want to register a protest, we do so by either staying at home or spoiling our ballot paper. The only conceivable way that I could ever support compulsory voting, and I don't think I would anyway, but is if there was a none of the above category on the ballot paper. And if the none of the above won, then there would have to be another election. But even that doesn't really do it for me. I think we should all have a choice. Now, whenever an election's on, and obviously we're not allowed to talk about politics on polling day, it's part of the broadcasting regulations. But what I can say on polling day is to encourage everyone to go out and vote, even if it stops them listening to my programme for half an hour while they do it, because it is important to take part in the democratic process. I always say, and you might say this is a trite thing to say, and it probably is, but I do think it's true. If you don't vote, don't complain about what happens in the next 5 years in a general election. It's your fault because you let the other side in. Everyone's got a view on whether a particular party is worth voting for, and if it isn't, go and vote for another one. You won't ever find a political party where you agree with 100% of what their policy platform is. I normally, not always, but normally vote Conservative. I don't agree with everything in the Conservative Party manifesto. I probably agree with 70 or 80% of it. If I look at the Lib Dem manifesto, I might agree with 30 or 40% of it. In the Labour Party manifesto, I might agree with maybe 20% of it. So I make my decision based on the fact that I agree more with the Conservatives than any other party. I think it's a perfectly rational position to take. And you can extend that to other parties as well. Reform, I probably agree with more of their manifesto than Labour and probably the Lib Dems. So if there wasn't a Conservative candidate in my constituency, I might well sort of possibly vote Reform, but that's really the only circumstance I can think of. So we all make decisions in different ways. Some people vote to keep another party out. Well, it's a perfectly legitimate thing to do. So do you think that this is something whose time has come? Because according to this survey, more than half of you do. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Well, let's talk to Dr. David Klemperer, who's a researcher at the Institute for Policy Research at the University of Bath. He's also written a report on compulsory voting for the Constitution Society. David, very good evening. Where do you stand on this issue, first of all?
I'm very much a supporter of compulsory voting. I think it would be extremely useful for British democracy if we introduced it.
Why?
I think that British democracy currently has a severe problem of low turnout. At the last general election, only around half of eligible voters cast a ballot. If you look at official turnout rates, it was nearly 60%. But if we take into account the people who weren't even on the register, that number is about 53%. Now, I think a real problem is not just that we don't have enough people voting, but also that the people who do vote aren't representative of the public as a whole. If we look at who votes, the people who do vote are, on average, richer, older, whiter, and more economically secure than the UK public as a whole. And I think that's a problem because I think that gives warped incentives to politicians. Politicians of all parties, governments of all stripes, have clear electoral incentives to prioritize the interests of those groups of people who vote. And based on turnout figures, we know that those groups of people aren't representative of the country at large. And so I think what we get over many years is policies that systematically favour some groups over others. And I think that's a bad thing for all of us, really. I think that's a bad thing for democracy. And I think what compulsory voting would do is it would bring more people into the electorate. We'd have a more representative electorate, and we'd have more representative elections. And what that would do is that would give better incentives to politicians of all parties who'd be pushed to better serve the interests of those people who currently don't vote, who are left out of politics, and whose interests don't end up getting effectively represented.
Well, the electorate consists of those people. They're all on the electoral roll. I mean, OK, there are some people that never register on the electoral roll, but most people do. Aren't you just creating artificially high turnout by introducing compulsory voting? And it wouldn't actually achieve a lot of what you just said.
I don't agree with that at all. I think ultimately people either vote or they don't vote. And there's no such thing as an artificial ballot. If someone casts a vote, they've cast a vote. And once people are in the electorate, once they're voting, and once politicians know they're voting, that changes how politicians behave. And I think you can see that around the world. In the countries that do have compulsory voting, governments, parties, different candidates know that they have to get the votes of these people who in countries like the UK wouldn't be voting. So in Australia, for instance, or Chile or Belgium, politicians know that they need to get younger voters. And their manifestos, their policies in government are therefore more friendly to, more interested in the concerns of younger voters than in countries like the UK, where we have an electorate that's lopsided in that it's much older than average.
Why is it that people don't vote?
A large part of it, I think, is habit. What we've seen is a long-term decline in turnout as people fail to build that initial habit of voting. Once people don't vote, they kind of get into the habit of not voting. And when people do vote, we also see that they then get into the habit of voting. So I think what compulsory voting would do is it would sort of break the cycle of of apathy, of disengagement. It would remind people that it is their duty as a citizen to participate in the processes by which we're all governed, by which we govern ourselves, and encourage them to see elections as a key part of our collective life as a country.
Isn't the education system the way to bring that about, though, to improve we have many schools will have, well, in my day it was called general studies. I don't know what it's called now. But I don't think there's enough attention given to that sort of thing in schools. It tends to only happen in sixth forms. You don't get much of it before that. About teaching people about the importance of voting, the importance of democracy, and why everyone should take part. Isn't that a better way to do it rather than effectively criminalising people for not voting?
So the first thing to say is I'm a big supporter of citizenship education. I think we should have more of it. But I'd also say, and I'm sure you'd agree with me on this, Iain, that the best education in so many things is practical. It's practical experience of doing something. And I think in many ways, the best training we have for citizenship is doing citizenship, is going out there and doing our duty as members of a democracy who have an obligation to the other people around us to participate in and strengthen the democratic structures that we all benefit from. So I would say, yes, it's about education, but education is a lifelong thing. And every time I think we vote and we force ourselves to think about how we think we should be governed, to think about the political choices that we make, I think we're educating ourselves. And I think it would be good for all of us to be doing that at each election.
Do you think there should be a none of the above option on ballot papers?
Yes, I do. I think that would be useful. What I would say is that already you can spoil your ballot. I think that it's worth noting that in systems that have compulsory voting, you're obliged to turn up and cast a ballot, but you don't have to choose a party. You can leave your ballot bank. You can spoil it.
What percentage of people do that, say, in Australia compared to here?
So my understanding is that in Australia, the number of blank or spoiled ballots is slightly higher than it is here, but not strikingly or dramatically so. But nonetheless, I would support the idea of a none of the above option on the ballot paper. I think it would be useful to make clear that compulsory voting isn't authoritarian, it isn't about punishing people, it isn't about forcing people who really don't want to vote for a particular party. So I'd support that.
But if you're going to make something compulsory, there has to be a consequence of not voting. So there has to be some sort of punishment. Now, last time I looked, I think in Australia, you were fined the equivalent of £10, which isn't exactly a major deterrent to somebody to vote. And what would you suggest the penalty here should be?
So I'd actually think the Australian model is a really, really good one. So in Australia, the way it works is that if you don't vote, the Electoral Commission will send out an apparent failure to vote notice. And they'll essentially say, we see that you didn't vote. You have two options here. One option is you can pay the £10 fine, essentially accept, my bad, I didn't do my duty, I'll pay the fine. The other option is that you can write in and explain why you didn't vote. And there are a lot of things that can be deemed legitimate excuses. So if you're out of the country or you're physically indisposed, or if you write in and say, I have a religious objection to voting, these excuses will all be accepted. And because you've written in and explained your excuse, you won't face any further sanction. And I think that's a very good system of doing it.
So how many fines were issued in the last general election in Australia?
So the number of failure to vote notices, I think, was a few 100,000. And then of that, only a relatively small number turned into fines.
It's a lot of bureaucracy for not much effect, isn't it?
Well, I think it depends what you mean by not much effect. Australia has had 90% turnout in every election but one in the last 100 years. And I think that's a really remarkable thing and something that would be fantastic to emulate here in Britain. I'd say it's really not that much bureaucracy. They have a very efficient electoral commission that is very effective at being in touch with the public. And I think they do really get the results.
I don't think the Electoral Commission here is in favour of this, is it?
I mean, the Electoral Commission here tries, I think, to avoid taking strong positions on controversial issues of electoral reform, particularly those that would shape the Electoral Commission's own scope and powers. I don't think the Electoral Commission takes an official view on compulsory voting.
David, good to talk to you. Thank you. That's Dr. David Klemperer there. He's a researcher at the Institute for Policy Research at the University of Bath. And I'm sure you will be able to find his research paper on this for the Constitution Society online. Right, we'll come to your calls in a moment. Really interested to hear your views on this. And I wonder if there is going to be a bit of an age split here where older people tend to think, no, this is not such a good idea, and younger people do. But then again, you look at the turnout for younger people, and it is pathetic in many elections. It's under 25% certainly in many of the elections and referendums that we've seen. And I mean, people moan about Brexit, but it was actually the failure of young people to vote generally that tipped the balance. Controversial, I know, but it's true. It's 19 minutes past 9.
This is LBC.
Close your eyes. Take a deep breath. And come on in to Classic FM Calm, LBC's soothing sister station. Find peace in the music with Classic FM Calm. Listen on Global Player or ask your smart speaker to play Classic FM Calm.
You've probably been with the same energy supplier for decades. And why wouldn't you be? Loyalty matters. But lately, bigger hasn't always felt better. You've probably dealt with long waits and endless automated menus in search of someone who can actually help. Octopus Energy is now Britain's biggest energy supplier, trusted by over 8 million customers, because we do things differently. Our people focus on the most important thing, you. When you call, you'll speak to a real person. No robotic scripts, no computer says no. Just an honest conversation with someone who actually wants to help. Join the millions who've already made the move. Octopus Energy, recommended by Which a record 9 years running. Visit octopus.energy/better for verification.
When you're smiling. Banning Dental Group clinics with over 5,000 top-rated Google reviews. Keep on smiling.
Oh, you want weight loss advice?
Weight loss? Actually, what you want to do...
I got my weight loss secret from my mother, who got it from her mother's.
My tip
weight
is,
loss,
forget that, you just
keep dancing. Dragon fruit.
Podcast.
Advice.
Or you could go to MedExpress. MedExpress. Healthcare without the noise. Go to medexpress.co.uk/weight loss.
Ali 60mg hard capsules contain orlistat for overweight adults with a BMI of 28 plus. Follow a reduced calorie, low fat diet. Always read the label.
Iain Dale. Text 84850. This is LBC.
21 minutes past 9. It's a very simple question to you this hour. Do you believe in compulsory voting or do you not? Let's go to Hifsa in Haringey. Good evening, Hifsa. What would you like to say?
Good evening. The answer is a very simple yes from me. I am of a particular age. Well, I'm over 60, and I have not voted in any election since I was 18 years old, because I was brought up in a home where my father used to say, if you cannot be bothered to go and spend half an hour out of your day every 4 years to go and actually make a choice about who you want to run the country or run our council, don't ever complain about anything.
Quite right. You had a very sensible father.
Absolutely. And, that's the beauty for me of living in a democracy. But I can also understand why young people don't want to vote, because a lot of that is because they are not politically aware. And I do believe that we are letting our younger generation down. We address all sorts of issues in school as part of personal development sessions, and heaven knows what they call them now. We really need to be teaching our young people to understand politics. It's not about telling them which party they should vote for, but actually saying, you need to understand the difference that one vote can make.
And it can make a difference. I mean, we had a by-election recently in Runcorn where Reform UK won it by 6 votes.
Absolutely. And for me, it's so important that we have got a younger generation. I work with schools, and I see some incredible young people in these schools who I talk to, and the number of young people who have said to me, well, we wouldn't vote because we wouldn't have the foggiest idea who to vote for. So when I say to them, well, for me, from the day I turned 18, it was about what are the things that are important to me living in this country. For me, it's about justice. It's about equality. It's about making sure that we treat all of our citizens fairly and respectfully, and we take care of them. So you give me a party who's going to meet those needs, and I will vote for them.
Well, the other thing that people say is, I don't really understand what all the different parties are saying, as if they can't find out very easily nowadays.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that, for me, I think is one of another issue, really. We're talking about, on the one hand, of actually stopping young people under the age of 16 from going onto social media. What we should be doing is actually making social media safer for young people and making it easier for young people to get the right sort of information and not some of the horrific stuff that they will find, which creates so much fear, so much division, and they need access to the correct. They need information to what these parties are all about. The one, know where to go for them.
The one thing I'm going to disagree with you on is you said that you don't think young people are very politically switched on. Well, whenever I go and speak in schools, which I probably don't do as much as I should, but whenever I go, I find exactly the opposite. That they're far more switched on than my generation would have been.
Oh no, I think I must have misheard. You must have either I said it incorrectly or you misheard. Actually, what I was meant to say was they are they've got a lot of understanding about politics, but they don't necessarily know how to put their own thoughts into those actions.
Oriented than with party politics. And I think that is a failure of the different political parties. I have to say that. Hester, thank you very much indeed. Debbie says, I always vote or spoil my ballot paper depending on how I feel. We live in a democracy, so forcing people to vote is undemocratic. I'm with you. You shouldn't make people vote, but they should. They should. If they don't, well, then they have no voice. But I suspect it is a lot of people who don't vote. They shout the loudest about the iniquities of the country or how terrible the economy is. Well, you do have a chance to influence it. Let's go to Nina in Camden. Hi, Nina.
Hi.
What would you like to say?
Well, what I'd like to say is we're meant to be a democracy. We're not a dictatorship. And thus, sometimes, you're paralyzed because you just don't know what really each of the governments, the potential people really stand for.
We'll find out.
But I don't think you can say, hello, you have to vote. And if you don't vote, you're going to get into trouble and it's obligatory, because there's some people who just, don't want to vote. And why should you have to vote? We're not in school. We don't have a headmaster. And sometimes I think it's very difficult because when various, when people get in, whether they're Conservative, Labour, Reform, whatever, they say one thing and they do another. So I'm very cynical at the moment about it all. And we live in a very difficult society where we don't know exactly what's happening. And I just don't think it's... anybody should be forced into anything, really.
Well, you say we don't know what's happening. We have more opportunity nowadays to find out what is happening through the internet than any previous generation ever did. And if you want to find out, the opportunity is there. I always remember during the Brexit referendum, people would constantly say, well, there isn't enough information for us to decide. We don't know what... And I'm thinking, what? Just there are so many websites on both sides of the argument. If you actually spend half an hour going through it, you might educate yourself and therefore may be better informed.
Well, I think that you're right to a point, but I think a lot of the stuff that you get on the internet is not absolutely correct anyway. It's very difficult to decipher, what the truth is at the moment. Incredibly difficult.
Well, you have to choose. You have to. Well, that's always been the case. You have to choose the sources that you personally can trust.
Yeah, but how can you make voting
well, I don't. Like you, I don't believe you should. But there we are.
No. Well, I don't. I mean,
we'll end in agreement.
Funnily enough, I will vote, but that's because I want to, not because anybody's forcing me to vote. And what's the point of going to a polling station because it's obligatory and you've decided that you don't want to vote for anybody anyway?
True. Thank you very much, Nina. Milo's in Seven Sisters. Hello, Milo.
Hi, Ian. Lovely to speak with you. I think I wouldn't be opposed to the concept of compulsory voting, but it would have to be accompanied by changes to the voting system to get rid of quote-unquote wasted votes. You couldn't have a situation where you had this so-called loveless landslide that we had in the last election, because if you're going to force people to vote, their votes have to be consequential.
Well, you see, again, I think this is a very lazy argument. By saying not every vote counts, that's because the party in your area that you support doesn't win.
No, but I mean, you have other voting systems where, for instance, if you have a proportional system, then that goes towards the overall tally rather than just your area. So it still gets counted at the national level. So that's a bit of a red herring, really. The question is whether you favour the sort of more the democratic principle of just saying you have a choice to go to the ballot box. It's your choice whether to exercise it or not. Or if you are going to go down the compulsory route, then you have to have a voting system that makes those votes actually equate to a meaningful outcome. And even if that means you don't win overall, it still means that your votes are still reflected in the overall makeup of the parliament that you end up with.
Well, that depends which system, because there is actually no such thing as proportional representation. There are all sorts of different variations of it. And I mean, like in Germany, for example, half the MPs are elected on a first past the post system and the other half are. Yeah. So, I mean, you can do that. You have a different system in Scotland to Wales now, which I think is going to be quite confusing, where in Wales you don't vote for a candidate anymore in their parliamentary elections. You just vote for the party. And it's going to be very interesting to see how people react to that. Milo, thank you very much. Richard says everyone should attend a polling station with the option to spoil their ballot paper. That way they have to make a conscious decision and show their disapproval of all candidates. One of the highlights of being a candidate at an election count is to actually be shown all of the spoiled ballot papers, because the returning officer has a whole pile of them. And then at the end, they show the spoiled ballot papers to the candidates and their agents. And it is highly entertaining, some of the things that people write on ballot papers. Or should we say draw on ballot papers? How can I describe? I distinctly remember one. No, I better not. It's 9:31, news time with Darryl Jackson.
The government says UK airlines are not suffering from a shortage of fuel after the EU warned of rising prices and cancellations due to the war in Iran. Airlines are reportedly lobbying the UK government to relax environmental and noise rules and cut taxes on flying. The White House says despite extending the ceasefire, the US is completely strangling Iran's economy. Fresh talks designed to end the war look to have faded. And the Met Police says a further 2 arrests have been made by counter-terrorism officers investigating an alleged conspiracy to commit arson at an unknown venue connected to the Jewish community. A 19-year-old man and 26-year-old man were arrested in Watford, taking the total number arrested to 9. LBC weather dry with clear spells tonight, cloudy in the north and east, a low of -1 degree.
This is LBC.
Tesco Insurance are driving down the cost of motoring with 10% off car insurance. Take out a car insurance policy before the 15th of May 2026 and you'll get 10% off with Club Card prices. We offer a range of cover options, so you can choose the one that's right for you. Save 10% when you buy or renew a car policy with Tesco Insurance. Search Tesco Car Insurance and get a quote direct today. Club Card required. Excludes add-ons. T's and C's apply.
Right, who's all in for Cancer Research UK's Race for Life? Sunday Leaguers, dog lovers, beat clubbers, banker dancers, baby ravers, potters. Whether you walk it, jog it, or run it, go all in against cancer. All in to help fund life-saving research. Sign up to your local 3K, 5K, 10K or Pretty Muddy event from just $14.99. Search Race for Life. Prices vary by event distance and participant age.
Listeners,
We interrupt the airwaves to share an incredible discovery. The reason why Britain hasn't been so great of late is because the country hasn't been eating enough Weetabix. We must get to work in rebuilding Great Britain, Bix by Bix. By delivering Weetabix to whoever plans the traffic diversions, to delivery drivers who can't seem to find your house, and people who don't stack the dishwasher properly. To Britain, we must say, have you had your Weetabix?
Iain Dale on LBC.
9:33 on LBC. Steve says, I totally agree, Ian. People fought for the right to vote, but that means the right to choose to vote or the right equally to choose not to vote. What we know of a socialist state having more and more control of the people is starting to come true. What else are we going to be made to do, and what liberties will we lose? Let me make clear, this is not a government proposal. They're not proposing to have compulsory voting in this country. This is a sort of it's a poll. There's been an academic study, but I don't buy any of it, frankly. I totally agree with you, Steve. We do not need more things that are made compulsory in this country. There are so many things that we're not allowed to do now. I should have compiled a top 20 list of things the government makes us do, which we ought to have a choice over. But voting ought to be free. You should have the freedom to decide not to vote. Andrew is in Sydney. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Ian.
Good morning, I suppose.
Yeah, it's 6:30 something in the morning, and I'm always avidly listening to you. Me and my husband wake up, and we're always listening to LBC. Listen, I wanted to just say that basically we just all vote. We don't think about it. It's not a burden. We don't question it. I'm 58. I have never in my life heard anyone in Australia whinge about voting. It's just like paying for your bus fare, wearing your seatbelt. We just do it. And I think it's sort of seen as some sort of burden when I'm listening to a lot of people. People just do. And we all vote. And, it's very complicated voting here. It's not just like a tick box. You get, because we do, I think it's called preferential voting. But when we have to decide 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the big thing is we make a big event of it. When you go, I go to my local school. It's on a Saturday. There's a big barbecue. There's a bake sale. The young girls at the school have a big sort of Lamington drive, and everyone goes and has their democracy sausage. It's actually a fun event. It's not a burden. It's a day out for a lot of people. So that's it. I highly recommend it. Democracy sausage. That's what it's called. Yeah, they're very tasty.
And just explain to us what a Lamington is.
A Lamington is a quintessential Australian sort of pastry with chocolate on the outside and coconut, sort of not drizzle, but fluff on the outside. Sorry, it's a bit early in the morning, so my descriptive powers are not great. But no, listen, we just do it. It's the only thing I would say is we do have to wait in line, which is the only thing. But while you're in line, there's a band, there's people raising funds for the local school, the local church. You're eating your democracy sausage. It's fun. So and I would actually say the participation rate in the cities is about 96 to 97%. It's in the rural and regional areas that brings that figure down to 90. And yes,
you say in this country it's exactly the opposite.
Oh, okay. So the cities are very engaged, and we have to also. It's just not in general elections. It's your council. It's every election, and we recently had a referendum on giving our Aboriginal people for them to be recognised in the Constitution, and of course it wasn't, but you have to go to everything. It is, but you just do, and I think you know what it is. It's you're sort of mentally prepared for it, so it's not seen as something that's annoying or a burden. And we all do it, but it's fun. Like the school, it's like I'll send a video to one of Corey, your producer, next time to just show you what it's like. It's actually fun. We all look, or we go voting, and I go, I can't wait to get my democracy sausage.
Somebody has just sent in a text saying it wasn't a democracy sausage that you saw on that spoiled ballot paper you mentioned, was it? Well, I
wasn't going to say anything because I don't know what the time is, but let's just say sausages appear on a lot of spoilt ballots in Australia.
Indeed. And oranges as well.
Exactly. The whole thing. In fact, in some constituencies, they could actually, they go into the preferential treatment, you know. Also not, but they theoretically could.
I think we'd better stop there, Andrew, hadn't we, before you get me into a lot of trouble. Thank you very much indeed. Ben is a first-time caller in Loch Lomond. Ben, not in, near. Ben, welcome. What would you like to say?
I don't really know how to follow up on that last call. But yeah, I just think if this was to ever become the case where you'd be made to vote, and if not, you get fined, I think that would be absolutely outrageous. Even if it was only 10 quid? That's a couple of cans of Iron Brew, you know? I've never voted, and I don't see where any politician I would want to vote for, or more any party I'd want to vote for, because I like things from some people, and then I don't like other things, and I like things from other parties, but I don't like some things. So why should I be made to go vote when I'm not going to vote for anybody anyway, and I've lost a day's work?
Well, it doesn't take that long to vote, does it?
Well, I work in the woods and forestry, and I don't even know how to vote because I've never done it, or where to vote. It'd be, a good chunk of my day try to find this place.
Well, you have between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. to vote. Now, you're not telling me you're working from 7 till 10 every day, are you?
No, it's probably 6:30 till 6:30.
Yeah. So you've got the evening to go and vote, and voting is generally in your local school.
Well, I wouldn't even know where my local school is, but even though if that obviously that's, yes, I could, but why? Just for the reason.
Well, because the very fact that you're phoning in to a political radio show demonstrates to me that you have some interest in what's going on in the world. So, do you not want to influence what's going on in the world? And I hear what you say about not agreeing with everything that a party does. But I said at the beginning, I don't agree with everything the party that I normally support does. But I agree with more than I disagree. So on that basis, I think they deserve my vote.
Yes, I get your point. It's not like I'll agree with some things from a party and I slightly don't agree with other things. Most of the time I'll agree with something and then I really, really disagree with other things. So if I voted for someone and they brought in the thing I really didn't like, I think, well, I didn't want that. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. But, you're in Scotland, so, you don't need to tell me what your view on independence is. But say, for example, you were in favour of independence for Scotland. Well, that's obviously the main plank of the SNP manifesto. So you may not agree with other things the SNP do, but at least you know that that's something that, if they got the chance, they would implement it.
Well, yes, at that point, I said to the guy who I spoke to before that I would never vote. I should have maybe said I would never vote for like a government when it comes to I don't think I was old enough to vote in the last referendum. I would probably vote yes, just to see what it would be like, just something different. But I'm not going to vote for a party because for me, it shouldn't really be anything to do with the parties, even if just because the SNP and the Greens are the only ones who want it, it doesn't mean if we did get independence, they would be the best government to lead us, if you know what I mean.
No, absolutely. But several people are saying that you could vote by post as well. A lot of people, about a third of the electorate do now vote by post. I always vote by post nowadays.
Well, that's a problem in itself. I don't know if I should really go into. We recently moved house, and you have to sign up to electoral register, and they couldn't confirm our identity. So I don't think we can vote. And we have to go see a councillor to prove who we are. And it's like, we've lived here for all our lives, but because you can't prove who we are, because we didn't tick the right boxes on the form, we can't vote anyway.
So even if you wanted to vote on May the 7th in the Scottish Parliament elections, you now wouldn't be able to.
I think that's correct. Yes, it is, because we got a letter saying fill this out, and then we got one back saying we can't confirm your identity, and then this will mean you're unable to vote and stuff like that.
Well, that's very odd. I've never heard of that happening before. Did they not give you any sort of options as to what you should do now?
Yeah, you were to go see your local councillor or your local MSP or something like that. But as I say, I wouldn't be voting anyway, so I felt, well, I don't need to deal with that.
Well, I mean, I could be controversial now and say, well, you're not being a responsible member of society because you're not exercising the democratic right to vote, which many people have fought for you to have.
Well, yes, you could say that, I suppose. But did they really fight for me to go in and just? I don't even know how it works. Is there a sheet of paper in front of you, and then I just don't do anything and then walk out again? Well,
you're given a ballot paper with the names and parties of all the different candidates, and then it's up to you which you put your cross against. And I mean, as you can just spoil your ballot paper if you don't want to vote for any of them, but at least you've participated. That's the main thing.
Yeah, I get your point.
Do you not remember when South Africa had its first real elections after the apartheid regime fell?
You're showing your age here.
Well, I am, but the queues outside the polling stations, the same after the Iraq War in 2003, the number of people that turned out to vote because they recognised that this was a new era. They wanted to make their country a democracy. Now, in neither cases it worked out so brilliantly, but people really felt invested in it. And I think it's shameful when in some elections we have like a 20-30% turnout because they haven't. And it's particularly, I think, the case for a lot of women who don't vote. Well, I mean, women really did lay their lives on the line to get the vote back in the early part of the 20th century. And I think there are a lot of women that feel that the side is being let down if women don't vote nowadays. But, I mean, everyone has a right to make that decision. But under compulsory voting, they wouldn't. Ben, thank you very much indeed. We'll take more of your calls and I'll read out some text in a moment as well. Nothing about democracy sausages, though. 0345 6060 973. It's 9:46.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Henry Riley.
For the third time, MPs have rejected proposals to ban social media for under 16s. Are they shirking responsibility? And over half of young people say they wouldn't fight for Britain. Can you blame them?
Henry Riley at 10. Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app.
Hey, Harry. Hello, mate. Got any tips? Sometimes, pal, your best bet is not to bet at all. And BetVictor's app makes it really easy, simple and safe to do so. They've got lots of helpful features to help you manage your time and your spend online. But it also really helps that I can't find my blooming phone half the time.
Yeah, that does really help.
I don't even know where it is now. I can hear it, but I can't see it. Sandra?
Listen to Harry, and please gamble responsibly. 18 plus gambleaware.org.
Switching to Vodafone full fibre broadband is now as easy as pie. Ooh, freshly baked. It's a walk in the park. Hello, little fella. It's like taking candy from a baby. Come on, as if I'd do that. With One Touch Switch, it's easy. We sort everything out for you. We even contact your current provider. Plus, we'll help towards leaving fees. Switch today to full fibre broadband with Vodafone.
Up to £200 credit to cover leaving fees. More information and terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
3, 2, 1, 0% APR on an all-electric Mini Cooper. What was that, Luton? Handling is extraordinary, centre of gravity so low, and it could be ours with a 15% deposit and 3-year term. OK, Luton, reroute me to the nearest Mini retailer now.
Land a new all-electric Mini Cooper with 0% APR. Report to your Mini retailer today. Mini UK is a credit broker. Ordered and delivered by 30th of June. PCP finance with Mini Financial Services. Subject to status. 18 plus T's and C's apply. Mini.co.uk/Cooper.
Nothing beats that just booked feeling. Because when you book a Jet2 holiday, you start dreaming of pool days and seeing the sights. Get ahead for summer. Book now with just a £60 deposit per person. Choose from our best rooms and hotels and save £200 per couple. Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. Package holidays you can trust. Aptra Natural protected. Subject to availability and conditions.
Deborah.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for taking my call. I wonder if you'd indulge me in making 2 points on what I've heard this evening. The first one it's actually brought up just before the ad break, that I think we have a duty to vote, if only to show respect to those people over the years who have fought and sometimes died to get us franchised, to get so many people to have the right to vote. And I don't think that should be taken so lightly as to just pass that off by not even bothering to vote. I think a none of the above option should be included, though, so that can show the dismay of people who have no suitable option that they feel that they can tick.
Mm-hmm.
The second point I'd like to make was about changes to the voting system. A previous caller mentioned that in Wales they're not now we can vote for candidates but for parties. I'd like to take that a stage further. And each party should, at each election, there should be an issues list, let's say, of the 10, 20, whatever main issues of the day and what each party's stance is on those, be it welfare, be it defence, be it assisted dying, current issues. And then you are given those issues at the ballot box and you tick which way you fall in your thinking, and whichever party matches the majority of issues ticked, the general consensus, is the party that gets power.
That would be incredibly complicated.
Well, to start off, yes, but I'm sure it would after.
And what about parties who, like, they all agree on the triple lock, for instance? So, I mean, what would be the point of that?
Well, if everybody agrees, then it's not something that needs to go on the card.
I can't see how that would be practical. I mean, why not adopt the system in the United States and different states and Switzerland, New Zealand, where they have multiple referendums when people go to cast a vote?
Well, I'm not particularly astute. I don't know about those countries' systems, but I think that people do get voting fatigue if they're asked to vote over and over again, and that's when turnout drops, is when you've voted a lot of, many times and don't see changes. Whereas if the country actually votes exactly for the changes they want, rather than a bit of waffle from parties, the manifestos are often quite waffly, no hard specifics. Whereas on an issues card, as it were, it would say clearly what they're for or against. But
that is what a manifesto is for, isn't it? And it is one of these myths. People often say, "Oh, well, they're all the same, nothing changes." But I mean, you look at since Labour have been in power. Now, I might not agree with a lot of what they've done, but you can't say that they've just copied what went on before. They might have copied some ways in their behaviour, but there's all sorts of areas where they have completely changed direction in policy. And those are the things that they had in their manifesto. So I think you're overcomplicating it, if I may say so, Deborah.
Well, it's something I've thought about for a long time. And the thing is, as you said, I agree, no party 100% reflects your each person's views. That nobody's got to. You'd have to make your own party to get that luxury. But
well, there's a thought.
I think but, to have it laid out as individual issues, you'd be able to map that more closely to what a party has actually stated, rather than a manifesto which is a little bit more loose. And a lot of people don't bother to even read a manifesto, whereas if it was just a list, that would be much easier and quicker for people to look at and get a handle on.
Well, I think there are so many policies that you couldn't literally just sum up in one line. So I don't know how this list would appear. But Deborah, thank you very much. Always good to have an innovative proposal, even if I disagree with it. Otto is a new caller in Harlow. Otto, good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Hi. What would you like to say?
So I was thinking, quite a young person, and me and my friends, I think what brings us together, we are quite politically involved. We have strong political discussions, I'll say that. But I think with mandatory voting, that will obviously bring up the percentage of young people who are voting. And a lot of these young people, they are politically aware. They just need that little push to actually have to vote, to put in their own opinion.
I mean, it says on my screen you're 14 years old, which a lot of people think, well, that's incredibly young to be so politically engaged. And you're telling me that you've got a lot of friends who are as well. Yeah,
I do. So I'm in year 10. I think I have, it's not a significant group, about 4 people, including myself. That'd be 5. We do have quite a few political discussions outside, obviously, talk about the weekly football. But we do talk about when we're old enough who we're going to vote for in the general election. Our council, our local council, is going to have we're having a council vote. I know I'm not old enough yet to be able to vote in that, but I'm thinking of who I would vote if I was able to.
But you will, I mean, if they change the voting age, which they've said they're going to do, you will be able to vote in the next general election, assuming it happens when we all think it will.
Yeah, I'm quite looking forward to that. I do hope that law comes to pass, because then I'll be able to put in my vote. Even though it is one vote, it can be a difference. Yeah, well, particularly in a constituency like Harlow, which, I mean, Harlow tends to go whichever way the wind blows, i.e. if Labour form the government, they generally win Harlow. If the Conservatives form the government, they win Harlow. Yeah. And your group of 5, do you all have differing political opinions? Well, it's not largely differing. It's relatively, we hold the same political views with slight variations, with slight political party views, but most of the time they're all on the same side.
Are you going to tell me which side?
I'd rather not.
Okay. Are you ashamed of it, Otto? You should be proud of whatever political party you support. I mean, I do think this is quite interesting, though, that you've got together with this sort of small group of like-minded people, and you're very interested in it. Have any of you approached whichever party you're not going to tell me about? But have you actually approached your local party, because they would love to have you to help them, sort of on the campaign trail?
Yeah, one of the larger people here in Hollow at the moment, they're pushing to do a lot of things. Dan Swords, he's quite a nice person. I'd like to speak to him. I haven't got the chance of it yet, but if I was able to, I would look forward to it. Nigel Farage was also down here on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. I'd love to have gone down there because he was literally just in the town centre, but it was during school hours, so I wasn't able to catch him.
Wretched school, eh? Otto, thank you very much indeed. Enjoy your politics. Rob's in Tunbridge Wells. Hello, Rob.
G'day, Ian. How you doing, mate?
G'day. I'm doing fine, thank you.
Yeah, from Sydney all the way to your constituency.
Well, there you go. I'm heading back there in about 4 minutes' time.
Oh, well, I'm here. Just wanted to talk about how in Australia, like, we have to, I guess we're needed to vote, and I just wanted to talk about how proud we are in Australia when we have the vote to have the vote. Right? So I was in Melbourne with living with a couple of people, living with about 4 different people in a rental house, and it was during the gay marriage referendum in Australia. We had a referendum for gay marriage in Australia. And my housemate stole our postal votes, all of our postal votes, while we were away. And he voted for gay marriage, which we would all vote for anyway. But the fact is that he voted on our behalf. And as an Australian who has grown up having to vote and being proud to vote, that was one of the worst things that has ever happened in my life.
Even though he cast the vote the way you would want it?
Yep. Because the vote was stolen from us. Yeah. The freedom was stolen from us. And we've grown up having that freedom, having that vote.
And how did you exact your retribution?
Well, we put him out of the house. There was 4 of us in the house. He was booted out of the house. It was a massive thing. But his defence was, oh no, but you would have done it anyway. No.
See, this is what I like about Australians. They never mess about. They just get on with it and do it. Rob, thank you very much indeed. Well, thanks for all of your calls and messages this evening. I'll be back tomorrow from 7. Coming up at 1 on LBC, it's James Max. But right now, in for Ben Kentish, here's Henry Riley.
Thank you very much, Ian. Good evening. At 10 o'clock.
Any suggestion that these companies can be trusted to safeguard our kids without regulation is, I believe, naive.
MPs have for the 3rd time rejected proposals to ban social media access for under 16s. Are they shirking responsibility? At 11.
These are people who just feel that they've done what was asked of them. I think the way a lot of young people would put it is, why fight for a country that isn't fighting for me?
A new poll has found that half of young Brits say they would never fight for the country, but is anyone actually surprised by that? And after